Hello everyone, welcome back to Beyond the Veil Tarot and Astrology. My name is Candice Marie. Happy Friday. I hope you guys are doing well. I'm coming to you guys live on the channel on Friday. We are May 15th, 2026. So if you guys can see me, give me a thumbs up, like the stream, and drop me a comment in the chat. Let me know where you're tuning in from. I'm excited to be back. I missed you guys last week. I was like traveling. I had so much stuff going on. So we will be doing tarot next week if I missed you. And we have a whole bunch of people who are already in the queues. So a little bit about the readings this evening. I'll go through my roll call and let you guys know who I have. But readings are already closed. So these are getting busier and busier as we always do the kind of live astrology under the new or like the full moon cycles. I'm answering your guys' questions live in real time. So I'm going to be answering questions about your natal chart, timing. We've got a bunch of synastry readings tonight. And obviously, if you guys have any questions about the new moon in Taurus, I'll be answering those as well. If I missed you guys and you wanted to get a reading, just as a heads up, usually by the time we get to doing the live, we no longer can take any readings because we can only take so many people because we're here for a couple hours filming the lives. If you guys want to ensure that you guys get a astrology reading in the future, subscribe to the channel, click the bell button below. That way you guys can see my videos. I'm always here at 6 p.m. Central Time on Fridays. You guys can see the live link that we either post on Thursdays in the community tab or on Friday morning. So as soon as you guys see that link gets posted, you can go to it. You guys can send your donation to my PayPal, and you can send me your question in the memo box with your birth information. So that way you guys are guaranteed to get a reading. So definitely subscribe to the channel so that way you can do that. If I missed you, I'm sorry I missed you. And I know we have so many people that are here. So what's up, Diana? We've got Juny that's popping in. Stephanie's back. Amanda's here. And I'm going to be answering a lot of questions for everybody else. What's up, Mary? Do the dang thing coaching. Nice to see you. All right, well, let me get to the laundry list of the people that I have. That way you guys know if you already got in the queue. We are actually going to be starting with, let's see, who do we have here? So we're going to start with our level 4 members first. So Juny, Diana, Steph, and Amanda are going to be the first people that we're going to take. And then the other people that I have on the list is Jamie. We've also got A. She's got a synastry question. We've got Catalina, Danielle, Grace, Rachel, Amy, Mia, and Durian. So if you hear your name, that means that I got you. And I'm excited to kind of read for you guys today. A little bit about the readings. I'm a Western astrologer. That's the kind of astrology that I practice. You guys see a lot of my videos. I show all my predictions from the whole rising signs, but I'm actually a Placidus astrologer. So that's a system that I like to use. And that's what I'm going to be showing you guys today in real time is what's going on with the clients that are coming to me who are in the chat, who are watching. I'm going to be looking at their chart and answering their questions and hopefully giving you guys a little bit of insight. Now, if you guys haven't already seen the new moon in Taurus video, definitely check it out. We are going to be seeing that the new moon is going to be happening like in the next, I don't even know where the moon is right now, but I know we're coming into the new moon in Taurus. It's going to be tomorrow. So you guys can definitely check out that if you have any kind of questions about how it's impacting your rising sun or moon sign. I also always cover these things in the horoscopes, which I always put out like 2 weeks before the next month. So you guys can always see what's going on with all of the transits there. What's up, Red Juritus? Nice to see you. Got chocolate chip protein muffins. Nice. All right, well, let's get going. We're going to start with Juny and then Diana, Steph, and Amanda. What's up, Steph? Nice to see you. All right, so we've got Juny here. She is a level 4 member, so thanks for coming back. Sometimes when you guys put your questions in the like the chat, I don't know, YouTube like sometimes like clears them out. So thanks for circling back around. So it looks like Juny says May 7th, 1996 in Valencia. So she is a Virgo rising, sun in Taurus, and her moon is in Capricorn. She says, I currently have a Bell's palsy facial paralysis on half of my face, which has to do with my facial nerve. My full onset date was March 24th, so I'm nervous about 8 weeks from now with very minimal signs of improvement or recovery. I've had some small twitches or spasms here and there, but overall it hasn't. There still isn't any visible movement in my face, which has been really hard on me, and I'm wondering what you see. Anything upcoming transits, progressions that point to healing or recovery, improvement, or a turning point with this condition. I'd especially love to know if you see any periods where things begin to improve, more noticeably when it comes to health and healing. All right, well, I'm sorry to hear you're going through that. Do you mind me asking which side of your face is most impacted? I don't know if you said that in the chat. I was just kind of like reading everything, but if you're watching, I'd love to kind of hear that feedback, because I want to look at, you know, what's going on with your, obviously your face and your health in general, but anything that's impacting one side is going to be one planet and the other side is going to be another. So definitely let me know. Were you able to get my message I sent with the subscription renewal message? No, I didn't get anything from you, Des. What did you get with the subscription renewal? I did get an email from another person, well, not an email, but I was talking to another client who was saying they were having issues signing up for like the membership. So I don't really know what the deal with that is, but I need to talk to YouTube because I was just talking to him about it yesterday. But if you got something, let me know, because I want to know if there's something going on with memberships. Anyway, for Juny, we're going to talk about what's going on with your health. So if we're looking at that, we're going to be focused on what's going on with Mercury, because Mercury rules your chart. And so you've got Mercury in Taurus, and you've been undergoing a Uranus transit right on top of your Mercury. And interesting that your Mercury is retrograde, okay? And it's also conjunct the fixed star Algol, which is also known as the winking star. So it's been interesting. I've had a lot of clients over the last couple of years with Uranus going over that star who have had all kinds of issues, either with their eyesight, mental health stuff. And I've had a lot of clients who have also had issues with like strokes or issues with like cerebral palsy, like issues with their face. So I'm not used to hearing about that. What I would really focus on is the aspects that are going on between Mercury and Pluto. Okay, so Pluto is actually retrograding away right now from your 6th house. That tells me that, you know, with Pluto being intercepted in your 3rd, there is this like impact emotionally and psychologically when it comes to your health. So like nerve related things that are connected to stress, things that are connected to like your nervous system, changes maybe in how you're kind of reevaluating what's happening with your health. And Mercury is now moving out of a Pluto is moving out of a trine with your natal Mercury. So you've had that off and on for the last couple of years. Nope, no worries. It's the right side of your face. Okay, so that's going to be more connected to your sun. So, you know, looking at this, it's going to be complicated because we have to look into the progressions. But I can tell you, having Uranus coming off of your natal Mercury, I think is going to be beneficial. I would also be paying attention to what's going on when Pluto is coming back into your 6th house, which is not going to be until like the beginning of next year, maybe in the spring. And I think that this is also triggered by some of the things that are going on with the eclipses that have been in Virgo, where there can be some significant changes that can be happening with your body, and like things that feel like they're kind of coming undone, or where you're feeling kind of, some people say they feel disheveled, other people feel like they don't feel complete and they're losing certain aspects of themselves. As these eclipses have been going on, they've been making aspects to your Mercury. Like we could go back in time and we could look at the eclipses that started in Virgo here, right here. And that was kind of starting what was going to be a 6-month cycle, maybe even longer, maybe a year of anything that was going to be connected to changes with your health. Now that was trining your Mercury, where Uranus was on top. And then this was also trining Pluto. So it does make me feel like frequency healing, anything that's going to be about kind of taking care of the nervous system, changes in terms of your medical team, like all of that stuff is going to be like impacting you basically through the next year. And we want to see some nice aspects that are going to be going on with both transit Mercury and natal Mercury. Now, Uranus is also now going to be ruled by Mercury. So when you see that Uranus is moving into your 10th house, maybe you're feeling like, okay, there's something that's changing about your physical appearance out in the world. Maybe this is changes that's going on with you professionally. And you're actually going to be seeing Uranus trine Uranus. Okay, Uranus will be trining Pluto as well. So that does make me feel like there is going to be some changes to your health. I think it's going to be about working with like maybe like alternative practitioners, maybe people who are also going to be focusing on like treating any like nerve related issues or nerve damage. Let's see. Yes, I've been super stressed due to relationship issues. Okay. So I'm watching when Mercury starts coming into a trine with Pluto, like that can be when you see some relief, especially mentally with your health. So that's going to start around the 19th. That's like literally in the next week. And then we're also going to be watching when you have the sun, which is going to be about wrapping things up in a trine to Pluto. So it's going to be closer to the 26th of May. And then what you're also going to want to watch is when Mars starts coming into conjunction with Uranus and trining Pluto. Now, this could be some kind of breakthrough treatment. It can also mean that, you know, you're shifting gears in regards to how you're managing work because you're trying to really focus on taking care of your health. Mars is sometimes going to be things that are going to be like surgical. It can also be things that are kind of like injections that can potentially be presented to you to kind of deal with a medical issue. And I see that around like the 2nd of July through the 5th of July. And then down the road, every time we see Mercury retrograde now, there's going to be a change going on, you know, with either your appearance or with your work. So, you know, this Mercury retrograde that's going to happen the end of June into July, to me, this is like you getting back out there and feeling like you can kind of socialize and connect with people again. And then that'll obviously happen for about 3 weeks. But I'm thinking about this. I'm thinking about when you have the Cazimi, that's on your ascendant, right around the full moon in Pisces, which is going to be bringing up more like relational dynamics, but it's also going to be about you going, okay, if something's bringing me too much stress, health-wise, work-wise, relationship-wise, you know, this may be a time where you're having like a breakthrough and you're releasing it and you can heal something because Jupiter's helping you heal in your 12th house. And then you will also see another eclipse and a retrograde that's going to be in early February of next year, which is going to set the stage for, you know, new kind of health and healing matters. And Mars is going to be retrograde on your ascendant. Mars is going to be about your mental health, anything that's dealing with stress, breathing, anything that's connected to communication. So this is basically saying you're ready now to start a new phase when it comes to your health and healing. Mercury will actually retrograde there too. So like the warning that I had for you is like if you're going through like a lot of like stress in regards to a relationship, which is understandable with some of your Uranus squares and the eclipses in your 7th, this becomes more dire when you get to the beginning of next year. Because you're going to be so dead set on focusing on having like renewed health in February that between the Mercury retrograde that's going to leave your 7th house and go into your 6th where you're like, I'm more in tune with healthier habits for me. And then you're going to have an eclipse on your ascendant with a Mars retrograde. Like that becomes so much more significant. Like I really feel like whatever's going on now, I do think we can see a reversal now that Uranus is moving away from your Mercury. And like you don't have the typical things that I see where somebody is like struggling with something like lifelong. But I think it can be a slow process of healing something that's going on with the nerves and some change to your lifestyle and some change potentially even to like, you know, your job or like how you're working. So I don't know if it's interfering with your ability to work or not, but I definitely see that. Let me look at your progressions really quick. So I'm gonna go look at your secondary. Well, actually no, let's look at your solar arc here. There we go. Look at the solar arc. What's up, Robbie? All right, so you have got a Libra rising progressed. You've got Moon in Aquarius. Jupiter rules your 6th. And you've got Moon that is going to be moving into conjunction. You know, I guess it's going to stay side by side with Jupiter. That's what you're kind of born with. But that's highlighting any of the issues that are kind of going on with health. So a way to look at this is we look at what's going on with the chart ruler, which obviously is Venus. Venus is up here. Jupiter is going to hit Venus. Let's go back. And that's another indication that things may actually improve health-wise. You might really start to see that around the end of May. I would say the end of May through about mid-June. Venus and Jupiter are going to conjunct on your progressed Venus. So that's basically saying you're going to feel a little bit more confident getting out and about and doing things. You're also going to start to see the North Node leave your 6th house where there's been some weird kind of symptoms, strange kind of happenings. And now it's going to be moving into your 5th house. Now it's still got to come into conjunction with your 6th house ruler, but I do think that that's going to improve your health. And then it looks like we're going to see the Mercury retrograde, which once again, June and July is about kind of either making some career changes or some social changes. And then my guess is as the North Node is coming into conjunction with your Jupiter, like health will improve more and more. And that is also kind of segueing into what's going to be happening in about February of next year. So it's going to take time. It's not going to be something that's going to happen overnight. I think about the eclipses and the retrogrades in the 12th house, which talks about needing rest and recuperation from any potential conflict or drama that's going on in relationships. I'm not saying it's all relationship driven, but to me, you know, your progression is just kind of like, hey, I really want to feel like I can have more freedom in my relationships. Mars-Uranus conjunction in the 9th. Feeling like you need relationships that are also going to give you a little bit of breathing room where you feel like you can focus on like having love and like nurturing again. And then let's compare that to your natal. So in your natal chart, I'm putting your progressions over it. Saturn's coming into conjunction with Mars. So that's creating some inflammatory issues and some issues in regards to your face. Taurus is the face. The progressed South Node has been in conjunction to your Sun. So this has also been this feeling of like zap of energy and like not having like the best health. South Node Sun can knock the wind out of your sails for about a year. And then you have got your progressed Mercury, which is so conjunct Venus, which is good for work and career. But you have progressed Uranus on your descendant. Like everything here is screaming something needs to change with your relationships. And I'm not saying that in a judgmental way, but like it's in your transits of your natal chart. It's in your progressions on top of your natal chart. It's in your transits to your progress chart. Like if that is something that's not allowing you to heal, or it's not allowing you to kind of feel like, okay, you can be heard or you can be seen, it's trying to get you, I think, through the eclipses that are coming to really turn within and be like, what do I need to do to be kind of working on my emotions, my feelings, if I'm not getting what I need from another person? I do think you'll see improvement, but at the end of the day, I think you're really waiting until you get those eclipses and those retrogrades that are going to be happening the beginning of next year. And let's say you take some space in a relationship, or you're just trying to kind of work on things. If you do end up doing that, you decide to stay in the relationship, February is going to be the time you're like, okay, now that I've created like this new kind of like routine for myself, or I'm doing better, do I want to get back into dating? You know, can I be integrating, kind of being with this person again? Or if you stay with them, it's going to be a time where you're like, can I juggle, you know, health as well as whatever is going on with some of these relationship shifts? Go and learn about Uranus conjuncture midheaven, because this is like a huge status change or a new way of approaching, you know, your career or your responsibility when it comes to health. But so many people that I've seen have that, you know, I would say 26 to about 28 degrees of Taurus, especially if they have stuff on the midheaven, like the Uranus transit. Something has happened either to like their throat or their neck, or like a lot of them have told me that they've had issues that have been going on with like their nervous system or with their face. Even their thyroid, that's been something else that's come up for a lot of people, which has impacted something in regards to the way that they look. But I think the future looks quite bright in terms of the whole healing really becoming more so complete round about the beginning of next year. My only warning to you is just be mindful of how much relationship drama can be taking a toll on you, because that does seem to be something that comes through several versions of the chart. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. Something about like frequency healing is very much Pluto in the 6th. So I'm wondering, like, is there some kind of, you know, alternative, you know, medicine space that you can go into? Do you go and work with somebody who's doing some kind of nerve therapy? Are you getting Reiki? Are you doing cranial sacral work? You know, anything that's going to be kind of new age and things that's going to be like frequency based, like Rife machines, binaural beats. Those are things that I would be looking into that I think could actually really help, you know? Yeah, it doesn't mean the relationship has to end, but the fact that that cycle comes through several versions of your chart is just very obvious to me. Like Uranus coming into your progressed Uranus hitting your descendant would be enough to end a relationship, to be honest. But the fact that you've got some other things that are kind of going on that's indicating like it's really bringing so much stress that you don't know how to deal with them, that like now it's becoming internalized. And, you know, Mercury retrograde means that if you're not dealing with the stress, you're not vocalizing things, you're not communicating things, then it has this internalized way of like dealing with everything. And Uranus going through there is like, if you're not speaking up, you're not sharing what's on your mind, or you're not showing how much it's impacting you, now it's going to start impacting the way that you look, right? But I'm personally not convinced it's going to be a long-term thing from what I can see. I think the Pluto-Uranus transit could actually be a real breakthrough when it comes to like just managing your nervous system. Also look into anything that's going to be like grounding techniques, right? So stuff that's going to be for, you know, somatic work, so you can be working on the nervous system and kind of releasing some of that stuff. I think you'd be surprised how much could actually change, especially out of 4. A lot of it's emotional. Hopefully that's helpful for you. Difficult stuff. Definitely come back and give me feedback and let me know what's happening over the next couple months. All right, we've got Diana. Let me pull her up here. Let me see if I can find her. I just had her here a second ago. I do too. Luckily, you've got some good transits going on. All right, we've got, where is she? I think she sent hers on the PayPal. Let me double check. Diana, are you here? There she is. I couldn't cash in this week because I already cashed in 2 weeks ago. So I'm just in need of guidance. Any insight would be helpful. There she is. All right, let me go and look at your question. Make sure I've got the right Diana here. I've got so many people. I gotta clear out my client files. I've got like a dozen Dianas. All right. So Diana V. So that's the January 10th, 85, huh? Anything in particular you want some insight on, my dear? Just in need of guidance. Yeah, I saw it. It didn't have a memo, so I'm not sure what you want me to look at. I've just been overworking and needed some guidance regarding anything you see. All right, you got it. Seems to be the theme here. You got Venus coming into a square. Obviously, you're Libra rising, so you're a bit stretched, my dear. Here, let me make sure we have the right transits up. Hold on. There we go. So she's a Libra rising. Her moon is in Virgo. Her sun is in Capricorn. Venus is going to be the first thing that I'm going to look at. And you've got a bunch of oppositions going on right now. So to me, it seems like you're being stretched pretty thin. The first one that I notice is Venus is in Gemini in the 9th, which is usually about traveling, learning, taking time off, doing the things that you want to do, you know, shifting your philosophy. And it's in opposition to Mercury, which means there can be a little bit of stress when it comes to communicating. And like Mercury is going to be about your routine, it's about your health, it's about your habits. It's also about feeling like, you know, there's things that you would rather be doing, but you're having to kind of be out in the world, kind of getting stuff done. Venus trining your ascendant is nice, but that opposition for the next couple days is a little much. And then Jupiter, which rules communication, is just sliding into your 10th house of work, and it's also opposing your sun and your Jupiter. So between Jupiter in opposition to your sun, Venus in opposition to Mercury, it looks like you've been stretched a little thin. Saturn is still hanging out in your 6th house of health and habits. So even though you're a Libra rising, you're still kind of dealing with what a lot of the Scorpio risings are dealing with Saturn requiring you to just be more of service, to be working more, to be cleaning up the mess of other people, to be kind of picking up after others, providing services and also support. And a lot of my Libra risings have been telling me that they're just like burnt out. They're just like with either dealing with other people or with just the sheer amount of work that's been going on. It's just been a lot. And obviously having planets in opposition basically means that you're having to confront something. So usually because you have so many planets at the bottom of your chart, there's a lot of you kind of being a creature of habit, focusing on your private life, your emotions, things that are going on with, you know, your inner world. And when these planets start coming into opposition, right? Mercury and the sun in opposition to Saturn, Jupiter in opposition to Jupiter and the sun, Venus in opposition to Mercury. it's almost like you're being asked to get out of your usual routine and then go out into the world. And what you'll find is that there can be like a lot of obstacles and you could feel like you're confronting things. And it just honestly doesn't feel good. Now, these are temporary, right? Venus moves quick, the sun and Mercury moves very quick. But I would be asking you with like the Cazimi and also the new moon that is taking place tomorrow in opposition to your Saturn, how much is too much, right? So usually Saturn in the South Node in the second house, they work very hard for what they have. There's always a sense of them chasing security. There could be lack mindset. I mean, certainly you've gone through some really kind of tough periods where you haven't like had a lot of stability or a lot of support. So I think this new moon is really kind of highlighting where it's like it's time to now really reevaluate and reassess how you can transform the way that you look at finances, security. That could be emotional security, psychological shifts, things that are connected to like intimacy. And this is going to kind of show you where, you know, it's time for you to slow down and like stop and smell the roses, because Taurus wants us to be more kind of involved and focused on embodiment and things that are connected to sensuality and things that are going to be about, you know, like needing just what we need to just kind of like thrive. Saturn, I think with the opposition to this new moon is asking you like, where can you ask for support from other people, right? So like a new moon in the 8th house would mean, is it time for you to potentially consider, you know, asking other people for support, emotional, physical, financial? That could be some of the things you're thinking about. It makes a beautiful trine to your sun and your Jupiter. So it seems like the transformation is going to be more transformation of family relationships, maybe a transformation of how you communicate, how you're thinking. And it could be talking about work, right? Capricorn, business, things that are connected to kind of money and productivity. And then if you look at the South Node's coming up on your moon. So just having Jupiter connected to your 10th house, yeah, you're going to work your tail off, but the moon represents your career. So you're having a once in like an 18 and a half, 19-year transit where the South Node hitting your moon is going to be about you going like, emotionally, I'm a little spent. You know, I'm not feeling super consumed with the idea of working all of the time. I don't want to deal with people. That's very much the South Node in the 11th house. Or maybe your dreams revolving around your career and your goals are changing in some way. Now your moon is at a 2. So it's very much money driven, where there can be a sense of you going, okay, you know what? It's not worth working, you know, as much as I've been working. I'm going to be willing to cut some of this off. So it might mean you're willing to take time off. It might also mean that you're willing to change jobs. It can be a little bit harder kind of getting along with people in the workplace with this. And this South Node moon does make us feel very moody. So that's a quick moving transit. It's going to be conjunct at the beginning of June, and then you're going to see it leave the conjunction to your moon. And then come the end of June, Mercury is going to be retrograding right on your midheaven, right? So you'll hear, oh, Libra rising, you know, you're going through some changes when it comes to your working routine. You know, you're changing jobs, you're scaling back, you're going back to old jobs, you're kind of renegotiating things. And Mercury represents kind of conclusions and endings and the self-undoing that can happen from working too much. A lot of Libra risings will do that with Virgo in their 12th. So I would assume that by the time you get to about this time next month, you're either going to be saying to yourself, okay, now I am ready to kind of scale back because, you know, I've realized where kind of, you know, burning myself out has not necessarily been helpful or productive. Or it can mean that you're deciding that, you know, you want to change something about your schedule. Maybe you're traveling. Certainly you got to be careful with this Mercury retrograde because for health reasons, it can also put you out. It can literally, you know, put you in bed or put you in a position where you're having to heal something. And from a perspective of a Capricorn, you're going to hear, oh, the Mercury retrograde is about changes with relationships. Yes, relationships to your employer, relationships to your job, where you're working, how you're working. And that one's going to be a stinker because it's going to retrograde and it's going to square Saturn. And I think a lot of my Libra and Libra risings, they've already been telling me, they're like, how much more can I give to my employer? Or, you know, is it smart for me to continue doing the work that I'm doing? Saturn in your 6th is going to be really saying this is about you recognizing or realizing that, you know, you need more support from others. And like the 7th house Saturn transit could be getting astrology reading, talking to a therapist, having a supportive, like, you know, romantic partner. It's not that you can't travel during the retrograde. Like, for example, I really like to travel when I have a Mercury retrograde in my 10th, because rather than things going haywire at work, I will kind of zoom ahead and look at my schedule and be like, okay, you know, I'm going to need time off work. I'm going to be burnt out. So I'll take time off, right? So, I mean, that's something that I would consider. Obviously, make your plans before the Mercury retrograde happens, but I would start watching when Mercury comes into shadow and it starts squaring Saturn. So you're going to start seeing the effects of some of the things I'm talking about much earlier. It's going to be in mid-June, right? So that's going to be like here. So around June the 9th is the first Mercury Saturn square. And before that, you'll have Mercury square Neptune. So I almost feel like it would be probably smart just to watch what's going on with your energy levels, like June 3rd through the 9th. Most likely you're going to be like, you know what, I want to travel. I want to go somewhere, you know, Mercury, Venus, Jupiter in the 9th. But, you know, I have work. And I would be like, cool. But Mercury's trining your Mars and your Venus. Like, what a perfect time to be like, yeah, I want to go to another country and just have a getaway. Just make sure you're booking it before Mercury is retrograde. And if you travel somewhere internationally during the retrograde and you take time off of work, it makes sense to me. Let's see. So she says, so no traveling. I was planning on taking a vacation to Mexico. If I were you, I would probably book this when Mercury has better aspects in the sky. So like, for example, Mercury is going to come out of the square with Saturn. So you make sure you don't have any schedule restrictions. And then if you're going to go somewhere, then maybe book it after the new moon in Gemini. And you could either go somewhere around June 15th, you know, or you decide that you want to book your travel when you have the new moon and the moon's approaching a conjunction to Mercury and Jupiter. So you could actually go somewhere. I would go somewhere the 15th or 16th of June, personally. Okay, you want to go in July. So if you're going to do that, then know that the retrograde is going to be pretty much throughout the month of July, but book it in June during the dates that I gave you. And you're better off traveling when the moon is in your 9th. So you could do something like July 12th through the 17th, because the moon's going to be with Venus. That's good for getting away. And then if you want to do it later, you know, the retrograde is going to be over as of the 24th. So you could go somewhere from the 24th on. But you've got some pretty good work days that are going to be setting up at the end of July that I personally would not miss this. With the Sun Jupiter in conjunction, I think you're much better off being at work. So if you can do it, you know, closer to the first half of July, that would be a lot better for you, you know. Mexico sounds like it would be fun. I know a lot of my Mercury, my Libra risings have been telling me, they're like, I just have so much work going on. And I was like, yeah, I know. Especially as a Capricorn, you know. But like I said, plant seeds under the new moon in Taurus because of the aspects it's making to your Jupiter. It's good for health. It's good for scheduling. It's good for anything that's connected to work, financial matters, investing. And maybe start thinking about, okay, if I'm going to work hard, I need to play hard. And like, yeah, use that Mercury retrograde to go somewhere. Just triple check your travel plans, you know, make sure you have all your documents. Also make sure that you got like luggage tags and all that stuff because, you know, when Mercury goes retrograde, we lose things. Mercury does rule your 12th house. You're more prone to losing something at an airport. But if you use the transits in your 10th house, it could be that you're, you know, working your way out of work to go and actually take a break. So watch when Mercury is squaring with Saturn. Hopefully that's helpful for you. I feel that. I feel like I just got back from a trip and I'm already like, where am I going next? Uranus in the 9th house does weird things. All right. Who do we have next? So we've got Stephanie and then Amanda. And then Jamie, you'll be on deck. Yeah, I always love to scan ahead and look at those retrogrades. I'm like, when it would be a good time to take time. All right. So what's up, Steph? We got another Libra rising here. Libra rising sun in Cancer, and she's got her moon in Capricorn. Let's see what Steph says. Cashing in. When will trading feel less restricted? I get out too early, leaving a lot of money on the table, or the day I decide to hold, it goes against me. Okay. So something to think about is that taking risks or anything that's speculative is your 5th house, all right? So it's ruled by Jupiter. And you're more willing to take risks this year than usual because, well, Mercury is going through, your signs. So there's a sense of you going, okay, I believe that I can take this risk. I believe that I can make more. The problem is just Uranus has been on your Venus for the last year and a half. Now it's moving away. So you may not see as much turbulence when it comes to like money lost. Granted, the next couple days, we're definitely going to see, I think, a lot of volatility in the markets. Personally, I think we're going to see that when we have the Mercury-Uranus conjunction, which is happening on Sunday, but there can be some things going on Sunday into Monday that's kind of turbulent. And I would also be very careful when Mars comes into a square with Pluto. So that's going to be happening around May 25th because it's going to happen at a 5 degrees. So that's things that impact the markets. But why are you having these losses, I guess is the question. Well, Uranus is off of your Venus. The bigger issue now that you're dealing with is you have got the Saturn in your 6th, which does deal with skills, patience, and timing, coming into an opposition with Jupiter. And be careful with whose advice you buy when it comes to buying or selling or trading in any way, because it can mean that you're actually getting advice from people and like you're kind of listening to people that might be kind of throwing you off your strategy. You also are going to be seeing that, Uranus is now starting to, approach the South Node. That'll be, several years that you'll be kind of going through that, but it's within a 10-degree range this year. And Mars rules your money, and the South Node is on your Mars. That alone would be enough for you to have losses. So you have one there, you've had one here, you've got Saturn that is squaring here, and also squaring there. And sometimes when you have Saturn going through the 6th house and you're just like, something's not working, I feel like it's about really applying a little bit more and being like, okay, am I using certain, software, certain programs? Am I going to be doing some kind of training? Saturn can be connected to training in your chart because it's intercepted through the 3rd. And like learning about like certain cycles and certain patterns. Like I've told people for the last year, I'm like, it's going to be really hard to predict what's going on with the market because you're going to see such big swings. And one of the bigger swings that I think we're going to see is going to be like July going into August. When we start getting into the eclipses, there's going to be some really significant things that are going to be impacting like certain cryptocurrency charts, certainly the stock market exchange chart. I think that we're going to see some pretty euphoric things probably in July and August. And then we're going to really start to see things like pretty significantly slow down in the fall. So October, November with like, Venus retrograde in Scorpio, we're going to see Mars retrograde at the beginning of the year. I think that the top of what we're going to see this year is probably going to be at the end of summer. And then we're going to start to see it break down. And then the beginning of next year with Mars retrograde in Virgo, we're going to see an even further breakdown. So timing wise, like when will it be better for you to probably start being more maybe aggressive or more serious about kind of your trading? Not that you aren't, but you're going to see when the full moon comes in the 5th. This is about taking profit. So you may take profit right around the end of July, like around the 29th. And then you're also going to have another full moon that's going to be very close to your Saturn around August 27th. Those would be the two times, the end of those 2 months, that I think you're more likely to take profit, especially like with some of the aspects that it's making to Uranus. And like, you don't have to hit the exact top, but I do think this is going to be about you probably being more cautious and conservative because that full moon's going to be on your Saturn, which is how long you're going to wait before you're actually taking profit and you're getting out. I don't, but I notice because I trade at work and people come and talk to me when I'm in the middle of it. Yeah. I mean, trading at work, because Neptune is going to represent in your Placidus chart trading, and you've got Neptune in the 6th, which is like going to be retrograde here in a couple of months with Saturn. It's trying to not get you to do it there. If I were you, I would be not trading at work. Where is your Jupiter? So your Jupiter's in the 12th. So like, yeah, you do need to be trading in the privacy of something where somebody's not bothering you. So if you have an office where you can shut the door and people aren't going to be bothering you, trade there. The other thing is like, I would be like with Saturn in opposition, I know you feel like you can't do it because you're at work and like, the market's open during work hours, but I would be like, go and set up your limits. Like if you have sell orders, if you have buy orders, if something hits a certain number, you have it kind of triggered and ready to go. So it's set up preemptively, because Saturn is kind of acting a little bit more on the offense here, trying to schedule and get all of those things able to kind of like go forward. It sucks. I mean, Saturn's squaring pretty much everything in your chart right now. It's squaring your sun, it's opposing your Jupiter, it's squaring your moon. And I would really watch when, you know, as you're getting into the fall, if you are more conscious and more conservative of, you know, your what you're spending or your losses, I think you'll have an opportunity to actually get your losses back. Because for Libra risings, you know, like the 12th house is going to be kind of connected to Virgo. So you'll see a Mars retrograde at the beginning of the year. You're going to see a Mercury and a Venus retrograde. And the time that I think you could gain some of this stuff back would be starting in August, when Venus and Jupiter meet. And then when you see Venus and Mercury start retrograding in Scorpio, you know, it's either about being really, really cautious with what you're willing to lose, because the retrogrades can represent losses. Or if you've been, you know, slowly starting to kind of like sell stuff and make profit, you may jump back in the fall and be like, I'm going to go and scoop some stuff up because you've accumulated a little bit more money on the side. That's at least my interpretation. Yeah, it's hard because Saturn's just triggering everything in your chart, and like work seems to be the culprit. So having to show up, being at a job, feeling limited schedule wise, not feeling like you have the balance between, you know, work and home that you would like. And so Saturn is basically saying, okay, you either have the option of trying to see if you can work hybrid or working from home because it rules your fourth, or it's about you just being more kind of direct with people about boundaries. Saturn's tied to your seventh, being like, when I'm working, do not bother me. So if you have an office where you have a door, close your door, you know, create the boundaries so people aren't bothering you while you're trading. But be very, very, very careful with some of the stuff that's going to be happening, because naturally, like, markets change when Mercury goes retrograde. And I think the big market fluctuation that we're about to see next is going to be silver, because Mercury is going to retrograde in Cancer. So that's going to be about silver. It's going to be about some commodities. It's going to be about things connecting to the housing market. Some stuff that's also kind of connected to international trade, you know, because it's going to square Saturn. So we're definitely going to see some stuff that's going to get a little bit jumpy there at the end of June. But certainly I think some of the tops are going to be like right around the eclipses in Leo. So we're going to see that closer to August. But the whole point here is for you to focus more on where you're making smaller gains, and you're taking those smaller gains throughout the year, and you're letting that accumulate. So if and when things break down, which I think they will, and it looks like you're going to try to accumulate a bunch of stuff in the fall. So don't be trying to go and get the big fish. Just focus on where you can be taking like the little wins, start setting money aside. So if you do want to buy back in the fall, you can do that. End of July, end of August, those are going to be the best times for you. Yeah, if it's an open space, it's like, it's not going to be, it's not possible. And because Saturn is conjunct Neptune, you're not able to focus on making money. And so if you don't have any boundaries, or there's like lack of boundaries, best thing you can do is use Saturn to go and set up some of your like buys and sells, you know. I have to trade on my phone, and my phone may be taking an L. Yeah, I mean, but you know, there may be new platforms and stuff too. Like Jupiter coming into conjunction with Mercury might mean that there's going to be new platforms that you're potentially looking at that's going to make it a lot easier for you to trade, you know. Even like bigger screens, or a phone with a bigger screen would be better if you have like a separate pad or something, because Jupiter is going to represent gadgets. Hopefully that's helpful. Oh, I have some of the same. I have stuff also at 10 degrees of Capricorn and 10 degrees of Cancer. And like the last like 2 weeks with Saturn squaring, I'm like, this sucks. Like I didn't think it was going to be like, you know, no Weeble. Okay. I know there's so many trading apps, but I would recommend getting something that's going to be bigger that you can have on a separate screen other than your phone. So maybe you can get it on an iPad. I don't know. All right. We've got Amanda. What's up, Amanda? We've got a Virgo rising, moon in Taurus. I love how all of you guys have something at like the 26 degrees of Taurus. So you guys are all getting impacted by this new moon, you know? She's got sun in Capricorn, moon in Taurus. You're welcome. Let's see what Amanda says. Cashing in. Can you please let me know what you see for me over the next few months, especially summer? I'm trying to meet some new people and date, but nothing has stuck. you see a new relationship or the Sag rising, Cancer coming back? Tell me what I need to know I should focus on. Not sure, but the past 2 weeks I have been so sad. All right, well, let's take a look. Probably a lot of this has to do with the fact that there's just been a ton of planets that have been going through your 7th and then the 8th house, right? So I think about like the late degree Virgo risings, like the Libra risings, who were going through in like April into May, you know, Mars, Saturn, Neptune, Mercury, you know, all going through the 7th house where you're feeling that lack of like connection and you want connection with other people, but you feel limited. And then Mercury, which is your chart ruler, has been kind of dancing through the 8th house. So it's been a lot of like emotional transformation, changes in the way that you see yourself, shifts in regards to how you kind of look at like security, all of that stuff. And then in terms of where Mercury is now, Mercury is moving off of your north node. Just sidebar, the fact that you had a Cazimi on your north node and the fact that you're going to have a new moon there, all ruled by Mercury, all ruled by Venus, and Venus is on your midheaven, is a great new moon for reinventing yourself, right? It's a good new moon for changing something about your relationship status. So if you're looking to, you know, improve your career, if you're looking to have a new status at work, if you're looking to meet someone, Venus can be about, you want to have a new kind of like status out in the world, and it's all going to be about change and transformation. Unfortunately, because it's conjunct Algol, yeah, we see a lot of people who are like, I've been drinking too much, you know, I've been sad, or I've been having some mental health issues, or, you know, I've been kind of feeling like I'm just losing control. And the new moon can be really harnessed, I think, in a positive way with some of the sextiles to Jupiter, where if you're just kind of saying, hey, it's going to be change across the board, change with your friends, change with your work, change with your relationships, and you embrace it, I think it can be wonderful. It's very similar to another chart that we were just looking at where, you know, this new moon was in opposition to their Saturn. You've got the same thing. So obviously Saturn in the 2nd house with the south node, there's this focus on, what do I not have? Why can I not have possession of this thing? Why do I not have more money? Why do I not have a relationship? And you got to watch out for the pitfalls where you can become super focused on, hung up on what you don't have. And that can almost block and inhibit you from being able to bring in all the good things, because the 8th house is kind of like, there's a method to the madness. Like things will end and kind of dissipate. And then it's leaving you feeling vulnerable, but that's because it's trying to kind of create like fertile ground to bring in new opportunities. I would use the new moon to just be like, okay, I'm changing everything, you know, and do something that's going to be connected to working with the earth. So cooking, planting seeds, something that's connected to working with crystals. And the 8th house is also about kind of like psychological and like emotional rebirth as well. Loving the trine to your Jupiter. So it allows you to do some like witchy stuff to manifest and bring in a new partner. I also love that it is trining your ascendant. So it's also kind of helping you get into better kind of healthy balance with yourself and like move out of crisis mode, which, you know, if you have 29 degrees Virgo, sometimes you feel quite strongly. I would also really focus on some of the Mercury transits over the next week. I mean, it's gonna be quite a bit. It's not the same as what you'll hear for Virgo risings because you're more like a Libra rising, but Mercury is going to conjunct Uranus around the 17th. That would be a wonderful time to go and either book a trip, travel, get outside of your usual kind of hangouts, maybe contemplate whether or not you want to take a class or you want to learn something. And then you're going to see Mercury that's going to trine Pluto. So in doing so, you might actually meet new friends, or you might actually make new connections romantically, especially because it's at a 5. That starts around the 19th. And then you're going to see Mercury that's going to start to sextile Saturn, where now you can start kind of really being a little bit more capable, I think, of being able to maybe get into a relationship that sticks. So traveling, education, socializing, getting out, learning something new, all of those things are much more likely to kind of support what's going on with your relationships because you have Saturn, you know, that's still in your 7th house. You're in your Pluto square, which is going to continue for, you know, the rest of this year into next year. That's also about whether or not you're willing to release and let go of the past or anything that's like that you're holding on to physically, emotionally, or in terms of relationships that's not healthy for you. And I guarantee, like, I don't say this very often, but like, I pretty much guarantee you're going to see something happen relationship wise here.
When the North Node goes into Aquarius, it's going to come into conjunction with your Venus. So sometime around mid-August into September is likely when you're going to potentially connect with someone. So it's like, yeah, mid-August to, I would actually say to mid-October, because this is saying you want more. Venus in the 5th, romance, female friends, fun, opportunities for hobbies. And right around that time that that's hitting, you're also going to start to notice that you're in a Mercury and a Venus retrograde. So you're basically saying, all right, my values have changed, my style has changed, maybe some financial shifts, but this is all putting pressure on Pluto, which means you're really hyper-focused on bringing in a relationship that's going to feel legitimate, and you're going to have some sextiles from your 7th house of committed partnerships to Pluto in your 5th. You're not going to believe how many opportunities you're actually going to have this summer when it comes to friends. Mars going into your 11th house with Jupiter means that the more you're socializing, the more likely you're going to connect with people. You might reconnect with old friends you haven't seen for a while. And I think that that's going to be a time that's really harmonizing actually quite nicely with Saturn in your 7th house of committed relationships, where you can have a nice balance between, your social life and friends, and also potentially dating, or like maybe one is supporting the other. Like I've said to a lot of my late Virgo risings and Libra risings, I'm like, you're going to make friends that's somehow going to either introduce you to someone, or you're going to start dating someone who's going to be like, hey, hang out with my friend group. And then it's all going to grow. Especially if you have Sag placements too. You're going to see a lot of fire trines. So like travel, socializing, dating, all those things are going to pick up. Maybe you're just feeling the effects of like your Jupiter opposition right now, where relationships feel really out of reach, and Jupiter rules your 7th. So as soon as you start seeing Jupiter coming into a trine with Mercury, heck, even Uranus, I think you're going to see some change. So that's going to start here when Jupiter gets into Leo, and right around the end of August when Mercury and Jupiter meet is also a good meeting opportunity for you. And then they're going to start trining your Mercury. So long story short, summer is more about your friends, right? Right now it's about getting out of the box and doing something different with your free time. Maybe doing a little traveling or taking a workshop or something that you want to learn. But as you get into August, you're going to be so busy socializing that then you're going to start being like, whoa, okay, now there are like relational opportunities. You want to be where the people are, right? When Jupiter's in your 11th house. So relationships will really improve, pretty much the end of August all the way through about, I would say, September, October. But right now, I would say use that new moon to focus on setting intentions for renewal, regeneration. Be like, okay, I want to let everything go. How can I bring in more, right? The North Node is your purpose. So it means that you're bringing in a change emotionally, maybe a change when it comes to your career and your goals. And more importantly, this is ruled by Venus, and the North Node is going to be coming into conjunction with your Venus over the summer. So you'll probably meet somebody who's younger than you with the North Node Venus conjunction. It's possible they could be like an Aquarius, a Leo, or a Cancer. And then you have a tendency, because you've got Pisces on the descendant, obviously to bring back people from the past. Jupiter's in your 4th. But you have a tendency to kind of go after like Cancer, Capricorn, Saggies. And that may be your type. That's totally fine. But I think that you're going to end up finding that there's a stronger connection to like this kind of Cancer, Leo, Aquarius vibe that's coming in. And it's somebody who's either younger or very different than what you usually date. And I really encourage you to be open so you can kind of see who that person that kind of comes in, because it can feel like it was like meant to be. So the summer is definitely looking pretty bright. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Amanda. So exciting to have a new moon on your North Node. That's a big deal. All right, we are now moving to everybody else that we have in the queue. So Jamie, A, and Catalina, you guys are next. And if you guys are watching and you're like, hey, I can't wait, we leave these videos up so you can come back and you can look at them. Just look for your name on the top like left-hand corner, and you'll see your birth information. And that way you guys can, see what's going on. So that way you can also leave me comments and let me know what happens with your reading. All right, we've got Jamie. So let's go and pull Jamie. What's up? Spotting. All right. So I'm gonna assume that's you, Spotting. That's you, Jamie. Overall, last year I moved from Florida back to Chicago. Last month I got a great new job, which might require me to basically move or buy my sister's condo. Hoping buy, but love life is bare. There's a Virgo sun that's had attention, but there's been no contact for a year, and I really hope for a reconciliation. But yeah, it seems like work and home, it seems like work is good, home is improving, love and friends are meh. Okay. So Jamie is Cancer rising, sun in Gemini, moon in Scorpio, really wanting to ask questions about maybe what's going on with your like love life is what it sounds like. And maybe your social life and your friends. So let me go back because I know you sent me a little message here. I feel like this month is important because of the Kazemi, the full moon in Scorpio, Jupiter in Cancer. Ultimately, I want to know about my love life, what might take off soon. I felt pretty isolated in the love and friendship department recently. Okay. All right, so here's the deal. Saturn has just like been brutal. Saturn has been moving through Aries on and off for like the last year. And as it's been moving into Aries, it's been squaring your ascendant, which is about changes from work that, you know, kind of produce some change with you physically or with your emotions. So you feel kind of like, well, you're feeling like lack, right? And it really over prioritizes what's going on with work. And Saturn's also been squaring your descendant. So it's a lot of you going, okay, I have to show up, work's going good, it's a lot of work, but what about my feelings? Meh. And also what about relationships? So we need to see something positive going on with Saturn for a relationship to happen. Well, interestingly enough, earlier this year, Saturn hit your Mars. So that means that there was this shift that happened in terms of you going, what are my goals? What am I working towards, right? And the home stuff makes sense because your Mars is at a 4. And Neptune has been there too. So even though you're saying work is going well, I would just keep in mind that with Mars conjunct Neptune, there can be this feeling of like, well, where is work in my career going? Like, what is the purpose? Like, what is the point? And for relationships, once again, we got to see something going on with Saturn. So you had your Jupiter return this year. It's now sitting in your house of money. So it can actually bring you some increased kind of money resources, buying land, things like that between now and the summer. But it's opposing your Saturn, which you have natally, you know, it's about a 13-degree orb or so, but Jupiter and Chiron in opposition to Saturn is like, oh, there's this longing for relationships and relationships are far away. And, you know, I feel wounded because I don't feel emotionally secure. People who have that opposition between Jupiter and Chiron and Saturn are like the 1989, 1990 kids who basically, you know, saw some really interesting kind of like roles in their family, where Jupiter, Chiron, and Cancer can be mother wounds, home or housing wounds, you know, Saturn, especially Saturn retrograde in Capricorn, like reassessing relationships and authority figures. So Saturn's coming in squaring this, and it's saying basically, okay, if what you want is Jupiter to grow, relocate, have more abundance, then it's basically saying you have to be willing to kind of take some sense of responsibility, both at work, but also in relationships. And so what I have found, just as like a Saturn and Capricorn person, I'm only a couple months older than you, these squares have been very interesting to me because I feel like Saturn and Capricorn, because it has this tendency of being like, I know what works, we always do what we've always done, this is the way that it needs to be. Saturn coming into Aries has basically been like, just because we've always done it that way, does that mean that that's the way it should be done? Does it actually work? And we're not thrilled about the square to Jupiter and our Chiron. A lot of us have basically been like, we need to move. There need to be family changes. Maybe there's some emotional changes. And it's just putting the pressure on you, right? So what you want to watch for is when there are some harmonious aspects, either to your natal Saturn or to transit Saturn in the sky. Now, could you see some relational things happening under, I don't know, a full moon in your 7th house? Yeah, sure. So let's look at that. So I would keep an eye on these time periods. So you'll have a full moon in your 7th house right on top of your natal Uranus. That's going to be happening around the end of June. Obviously, the moon is you. So the fact that it's going to be in your 7th house conjunct Uranus might mean there could be a sudden unconventional connection or you're meeting someone. And then you're also going to see down the road, Jupiter is going to go into your 3rd house of communication. So traveling, moving, relocating, seeing your sister, you know, getting a new car, that kind of stuff can happen over the summer. And it's going to start trining Saturn. So that'll open the door to basically feeling like, okay, I got work under control. I've got that situated. Now I want to get out and about. Maybe it's because you're getting settled that now you feel like you can actually meet people. And you will also see Mercury and Venus retrograde in your 5th, which means could somebody from the past come back to you? Yeah, that could happen. But I think the Venus retrograde is more about being like, okay, like I need to make peace with the past. If there are people who have not come around, then I need to open myself up to somebody new. So you may feel like you're only giving people until roundabout like October to come back. And if you don't see any changes, that I would encourage you, because the Venus retrograde and the Mercury retrograde will be squaring your Saturn, that you create space for somebody new to arrive. And like retrogrades sound scary, but they're not. Like, especially when you have like a Mercury and a Venus retrograde at the same time, it's almost like one person like leaves your life and one person comes in. So I would be really open to the idea of like meeting new people as you're getting into October, November of this year. And you're going to see by next year, when you are coming out of those, Saturn squares, and you start seeing that the eclipses are actually going to then be happening in Capricorn. My prediction is your big kind of like turning point with relationships is going to be July of 27, because you'll have a lunar eclipse in Capricorn. So it's like a big conclusion. The moon and Saturn will conjunct, and it's going to be squaring Saturn. So it tells me that you might be like, okay, well, are we friends? Or are we something more? What are we doing? Or like, what's the next step together? And with Venus coming into conjunction with your Jupiter and also the transiting sun, it looks like it's going to be quite beautiful. The only challenge is that it will be squaring Saturn. So you might be dating, but you're also going to be at a point where the relationship needs to evolve, and it's going to be like, well, do they meet my friends? Do I meet their friends? Am I changing something about my work or my career to facilitate having more free time? You'll see that stuff kind of set up for you in July of next year. But right now, it's more about figuring out where you're going to get situated. Saturn in the 11th house can feel very alienating at first, but like Saturn actually does very well in that house. And I would really strongly advise you, because Saturn is, associated with Aries, with like physical fitness, go and join a sports club or a fitness club, go hiking, go and take yoga classes, go and take hot yoga, maybe Aries. Maybe this is about going out independently and going to places where there's like singles and like other people who are also independently trying to find friends. Saturn is not your enemy. He's actually sextiling your sun. And it looks like it's also going to be about kind of choosing a place where you're going to land, where you feel like you're going to have community, and places where you can get out and about and do stuff, especially over the summer, that feels like a little bit more like socially kind of like entertaining. So Leo is going to be like theatrical stuff, live music, people outside playing, all of that stuff. So just hang in there. I know that it seems like a little daunting right now, but I think some of the best stuff is kind of yet to come. And I think that relationships, the way to relationships, because Saturn rules your 7th, in the 11th is, well, you have to go and become friends first, or you have to go and meet people who are also independently trying to meet people, not necessarily to date, but people who are just going to be more physically active and like independent. So hopefully that's helpful for you, Jamie. Talking to a lot of Cancer risings, they're all telling me, they're like, what am I supposed to do? How do I meet people? Especially the ones who have like the intercepted kind of like 10th and 11th house there. So you may benefit from listening to Gemini horoscopes. Even though you're a Cancer rising, listen to Gemini, because the Saturn transit's really much going to resonate with your 11th house. Yeah, that's going to be the big one. When you have an eclipse, that's going to be the big turning point. All right. Let's see. Who else do we have here? Okay, so we've got A, who has synastry. What's up, Jim? Hello, your channel just popped up in my feed, giving it a look. I'm a Capricorn rising, Cancer sun, Mercury retrograde in the 7th, packed 8th house, Saturn, moon conjunct Jupiter, and Rahu. Oh, I love that in the 8th house. That's fun. Got a lot of cardinal stuff going on there, dude. All right, so we have got A, and we're doing a synastry for A, so let me pull her up. She wants to be anonymous, so I'm trying to do that. Let's see. There we go. All right, so we've got A here, who is June 27th, 81 in El Paso. And then we've got the A other. There we go. All right. So you're a Virgo rising, sun in Cancer, moon in Taurus. Looks like your partner is a Capricorn rising, sun in Sag, and moon in Cancer. Okay, so I already see like the Mercury retrograde kind of coming up in their 7th house, but let's take a look at your question. Man, PayPal is just driving me crazy with their pop-ups these days. They need to chill. All right. Come on. Here we go. All right, so she says, are we done for good? We're currently no contact. I didn't respond to his message. Should I or do I move on? I won't be around for the live. All right, so let's just talk about you really quick. Jupiter is going to rule your 7th house, right? So you've got Jupiter that's now coming into conjunction with your Venus. So this is telling me, you know, in theory, Jupiter and Venus are the two benefics in the sky. Can you guys be on the same page in regards to your relationship goals? Can there be a positive, harmonious meeting? Yes, but I have to kind of put this out there. Sometimes Jupiter creates situations that makes it so big that it pops. Okay, so I would look at this and I would go, is there a potential that you can smooth things over in a relationship? I think that this is going to be more about whether or not you have support of your friends and allies and other people who are giving you feedback about whether or not you should stay in this relationship. Your Venus squares Pluto, and you're going to see Jupiter magnify your Venus, where your girlfriends are going to be giving you feedback about whether or not, you know, like this is a relationship that's actually good for you because of the square to your Pluto and your Juno. That's just my interpretation. The other thing that's going on is you got Pluto that's been sitting conjunct your South Node. And so this is about going back and forth with like a situation with like a younger lover or a guy that you're involved with, and whether or not it's becoming kind of like out of control, right? South Node in Aquarius is like, okay, this person's being selfish, especially at 1 degree. Is it working? Yada, yada. Now, Pluto's trining your Jupiter, right? So that means that there can be breakthroughs in romantic relationships if you're willing to be fair and diplomatic. Come on, you got that exalted kind of Saturn. It's also trining your Saturn, which means that it can kind of help you get to the bottom of whether or not this relationship actually makes you feel happy and if it's something that can kind of work. So you got some nice aspects. Probably what you're not liking is that Saturn is currently in Aries, so is Neptune, and it's squaring your sun. And that off the bat can create some issues with men, right? Father figures, solar figures, bosses, boyfriends, and your sun's at a 5. So it's about whether or not you feel like another person is kind of like truly seeing you. And, you know, if they're not seeing whether or not you need support, you need assistance, if you need love, like whatever. And you can feel like people can be a little bit more kind of like cold and kind of detached when Saturn and Neptune are going through your 7th. And then it's opposing your Jupiter and your Saturn. So this is creating what we call a cardinal T-square. Like, look, you got Sun and Mercury in the 12th. You're kind of the boss. Like you like to kind of dictate and determine how things are going to go, what's going to work. Certainly you've been around the block in relationships, and I think that there's always been some issues with relationships and authority if you have your sun squaring Saturn and also Jupiter. So it's really going to be about you putting your foot down, not in a way that's being bossy, but being like, look, this does or does not feel good for me, like emotionally. And that's what I think is really kind of coming up. Now, in his chart, okay, so he's the Capricorn rising, Sun in Sag, you know, Moon in Cancer. Jupiter is in his 7th house now. So can he get into relationships and be in a relationship? Yeah, but it's highlighting the 12th house where there can be some hidden issues in relationships that are kind of cropping up, and whether or not a partner is literally hiding out from him, right? So you're like, I'm not answering his calls, I'm not talking to him. He's also got Pluto that's squaring his Venus, and that usually creates a lot of kind of turbulence in relationship land. Venus at the top part of his chart can mean his relationship tendencies, his status, his career, and he's like reluctant to make some changes, and his Venus is at a 3, so it's like how he communicates to partners. I think that all of my Sages in general are going to have a lot of relationship changes. It doesn't have to be bad, but like Uranus in opposition to the Sun and Mercury means that there's going to be some relational kind of changes that are going to happen in how they communicate and kind of deal with partners, and partners can kind of seem a little in and out and erratic. And Uranus has been hitting Jupiter. So to me, first thing that comes to mind is kind of like, number one, this guy's, you know, going to go through the Uranus in opposition to his Mercury and his Sun for like the next year. So that's not necessarily going to calm down. That does bring a lot of turbulence to his dating life. He has the opportunity to kind of regroup, particularly I would say mid-June into July when Mercury retrogrades in the 7th. And this could represent that there is an opportunity to reconnect with someone or a rebirth of the relationship, which is going to be right around mid-July. And then as we continue to move forward, we're looking now at his moon, and you're going to see Saturn is squaring his moon. It's like literally like communication issues, you know, and some Capricorn and Capricorn risings are having housing issues where it's like they're trying to move, they're having like family issues or drama that's kind of going on with parents. And to me, it looks like his communication and some of the stuff that's going on with his private life is actually like hurting. It's not helping, it's hindering his relationships. And he's got some mom issues, Moon conjunct Chiron, the opposition to Neptune. And usually Cancer moons connected to the 7th house, they're very relationship oriented. But the problem is that like the moon is also very moody and the moon is like very highly aspected. So there can be this sense of like wanting a lot of togetherness and then he wants space, right? Saturn, Uranus, that's in his 12th. So as Saturn and Neptune are hitting his Mars, it means that he's becoming more focused on, you know, my private life, my home, my family, and it's creating some communication, some scheduling issues, I think, well, between you and also him. So at the end of the day, what's going to be most important is not even so much the synastry, it's going to be more what's going on with the composite chart. So we're going to look at the composite because that's going to tell me where you guys are at with all of this right now. You got a Scorpio rising, Sun in Virgo, and you got your moon in Gemini. So this is ruled by Mars or Pluto, depending on how you look at it. South Node, Saturn, Pluto, that can be kind of difficult because a lot of it's like fear revolving around intimacy, vulnerability, change. I love that you guys have Mercury, Venus, and the Sun, you know, conjunct in Virgo. I mean, that basically means you guys are always in service to one another. You might have met through work or you work together in some capacity or you're here to help each other change your kind of professional roles. Mars and Venus trine. I think it's that damn moon in Gemini. That's just basically you guys you don't always speak the same language, especially emotionally, and the moon in opposition to Uranus. So you got a bunch of mutable squares here. Anyway, Mars transits are going to be really important. So I would watch in this order the new moon come through in your guys' 7th where you can hit reset in the relationship should you decide to. And that's a 6-month window. That's going to trine your Sun and also your Juno. So it would be better for you guys to reconnect after that new moon tomorrow. And then you're also going to watch when Mars comes into Taurus, when it sits on your North Node and it starts trining, let's say June the 12th through the better part of like June the 17th. Mars is going to be in the 7th house of relationships and it's going to start trining stuff in the 10th. Like that would be a better time to start working through things. Oh, I'm just seeing your comments. A lot of common issues. He's avoidant. Given my Virgo rising degree, should I listen to Libra rising horoscopes? Yes, you should. But Mercury is still your time lord and you met at work. See, there you go. I think the other thing that I would just think about is like, you guys are a Scorpio rising, and that tells me that there's always going to be things coming up in your relationship that's going to require you guys to like start over. Like you have to learn to bury the hatchet if you guys have a composite Scorpio rising. Like there's always going to be something that's going to happen in your life or in his life or whatever, where you guys are going to have to hit kind of like literally hit restart. Venus rules your 7th. You know, you've got some eclipses that have been going through Virgo. So I'm just going to go out on a limb here. I mean, I think you guys have been having problems for a while. I think that there's probably been some pretty significant issues since the South Node was conjunct your Venus. So I mean, we could go back to like November of last year. And like, that's really when some of that stuff started. I mean, you had an eclipse that was there as well. So I do think that some of these issues are not things that just recently cropped up. I think they've just been kind of slowly kind of coming up like in the last couple of weeks. As we've had retrogrades, you know, going through your 5th house of like dating, and maybe there's this feeling of not kind of seeing eye to eye or feeling disconnected. I don't necessarily think it's over, but I can see some stuff way down the road that makes me feel like y'all might reconnect. So that makes me feel like it would be happening in July with like Mars on your moon and your Venus return. And I could also see it even further down the road when Mars comes into conjunction with Jupiter and you guys have some retrogrades in your 12th house, which is going to be around October going into November. And then you're going to have another one when Mercury is going to, when Mars is going to retrograde in your 10th house. But this is almost like you guys might come back into each other's orbit somehow work-wise. So if you're not still working together, there might be some kind of connection like work-wise. But, you know, you're through the thick of having the eclipses in your 1st and 7th house. You're also, you have some really nice aspects with your Sun and your Venus in a trine to like Mars. Like, I don't think this is done. I would go and just think about maybe the fact that, you know, emotionally you guys both respond to things very differently with your moon in opposition to Uranus. It almost can be too much togetherness or like not being able to be on the same page emotionally, and then you become kind of frazzled, and then it makes it harder for you guys to be able to kind of like plan long-term kind of like life logistic things. He's going to have lots of changes with Uranus in opposition to his Sun. And if you want to try to talk to him and make amends and see if you guys can find a way forward, I would recommend trying to do that when Mercury is coming into his 7th house. So you're looking at mid-June before it goes retrograde, because it is going to square Saturn. So that means that one of the biggest frustrations he has is that whatever you're expecting in relationships, whatever that may be, to me, it looks like he feels like he can't provide what you need, right? Physically, financially, in a domestic sense, because Mercury and Jupiter is somebody who's like, hey, like, I want marriage, you know, or I want to live together, I want a future, or I want a family, you know, and the square to like Saturn is like him being like, well, I can't give you that right now, you know, or like, I don't have the ability to do that, or I can't move. There's something that you're disgruntled about that he's working hard trying to kind of rectify, but it almost seems like, you know, if you're a little bit too direct with him during this retrograde, he's basically going to be like, well, there's nothing I can do about the situation. And if you guys kind of quarrel about it, you know, by the end of like July, there could definitely be some like major fireworks that could require you guys to take a step back. Watch what happens in the fall. If you guys aren't able to reconcile over the next couple months, when you get into like October going into November and you start to see these retrogrades on your ascendant, that could be a time where there could be some real reconnection. So Venus rules your 7th house, right? So when you start seeing it coming into Scorpio, let's say around mid-September, and then it will retrograde here, which makes me feel like you guys might reconnect. And that's an opportunity to literally hit reset around the end of October. So he might need to go and work on some stuff. You might be like, you know what, I'm more focused on my career. I'm hanging out with my friends. It's not now, you know, it's not never, it's just not right now. And you'll have better opportunities as you're getting into the fall to like reconnect. But one of my favorite things to see in a composite chart I see a lot of like married couples charts, you know, Sun conjunct Venus is definitely one of the better ones. Juno conjunct the Sun is another one that signifies you guys are very devoted to one another. I just think you're just getting your butts kicked because you've been dealing with, you know, Uranus coming into some squares with some stuff, you know, Uranus coming into conjunction with the moon, where there's like a real stressful way of kind of communicating emotions. And I think that my money would be on the opportunity to really rectify some of the issues and come together in a much stronger way, you know, closer to the fall. So hopefully I'm right. But I would say take the time, especially to really fully develop and like immerse yourself, I think, in relationships that are more platonic. You know, you're going to have with Jupiter hitting your Venus, lots of people who are going to be like, hey, come hang out with us. We want to spend time with you. Let's talk about it. What's going on in your relationship? And it's good for you to reconnect with people because they're going to give you some feedback. They may be more critical of who you're dating, but it's going to give you a little bit of like a reprieve. And unfortunately, you know, you're in Saturn in opposition to Saturn. And the one advice I would give you is you have to think back to when you were like 29, 30. If you have exalted Saturn in your 1st house with Jupiter and also Pluto, you hold your own. You've always had to take care of yourself. It's been kind of you against the world, right? So you've had to provide a home for yourself, take care of yourself, figure out your finances, do all that stuff. Now that you're coming into your Saturn opposition, you're like, I don't want to struggle by myself. Like, I don't want to have to do everything on my own. Like, I need somebody who's got like clarity and has a vision and they can show up and they can like be a man. And so you are naturally going to be a little disappointed this year with Saturn and Neptune in opposition to your Jupiter and your Saturn. And it's just about you really holding the line and being like, we can do this, but I'm not going to do it if you're, you know, not communicating or you're not checked in or you don't have a sense of direction with where we're going. Personal accountability is going to be a huge theme, right? With Saturn and Neptune in your 7th. So give it a little time, watch what happens and watch who or what potentially comes back to you, especially in the fall, because I think that's going to be like better timing. Hopefully that helps for you. All right, we have got Catalina and then Danielle, and then Grace. So let's go and look at Catalina's chart. All right, she is September 9th, 1991, Libra rising, sun and moon in Virgo. Are my Libra risings okay? I feel like we'll get like bouts of where we have a lot of Libras or like a lot of Sag risings or Scorpio risings. I feel like those are the signs that I've been seeing the most lately. All right, let's go and see what she has to say. And if you guys haven't already, make sure you guys give me a thumbs up, like the stream. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so that way you guys can see more of my videos. All right, so let's find Miss Catalina here. All right, so she says 9991, love matters and finding a partner. All right, let's do it. I probably do attract Libra risings because I am a Libra rising. All right, so you have Venus as your chart ruler, which is retrograde in Leo, and Mars as your relationship lord, okay, which is in your 5th house, excuse me, which is at 5 degrees Libra in your 12th house. All right, so here's the deal. Having Mars off the bat, which rules marriage and relationships, sitting in your 12th means that relationships can both be very karmic, and I say that in a neutral way. It's not good nor bad, just karmic. It can also mean that you have a tendency to attract people from foreign lands, people who are culturally different or diverse. You might feel like people are indecisive when it comes to dating. They kind of come and they go, right? They're not always going to like stick or stay. So what's happening right now is you got 2 big transits that I can see. One, well, I guess 3. One is that you have Neptune that's going to be opposing your Mars all year long. So where you're used to being like, where are partners? Where am I going to find them? It's now trying to get you to be more aware of, you know, your habits in relationships, what you attract. You know, Saturn and Neptune are still kind of chilling in your 6th house. You got to be careful of bringing in people who have health problems, addiction issues, work issues, you know, or just kind of like blind spots that you don't see. The other thing is you've got Chiron now moving into your 7th house. And like the truth is like Mars is there, right? Mars is going to be there for like the next like, you know, 4 weeks or so moving through your 7th house. So there could be a lot of action in relationships. But I think with Mars coming into conjunction with Chiron, there's this feeling that's like, ooh, relationships are difficult. It creates wounding. You know, there isn't this sense of really feeling a lot of togetherness. You might feel alienated, or you can kind of attract people who can be like acting like a victim or like wounded in some way. So be mindful of that right now. And once we start seeing some better aspects happening with your Mars, things will change. Now, on the other side of this, you know, Saturn will be opposing your Mars off and on. And that transit would be enough for you to be like, okay, what's wrong with me? What do I need to work on? Why am I not meeting people? What's the problem? And that's going to kind of be in a holding pattern on and off all year. Saturn's going to get all the way up to like, I think 14 degrees, and then it's going to retrograde back. So, I mean, pretty much until the end of the year. And I'm not saying somebody can't come in, but with Saturn in opposition to Mars, it's limiting connecting with somebody because it's not the right time, or you have things to work on, or you have work to do, or you have something to heal. Neptune making an opposition to Mars is like, who can I trust? Who can I not trust? And I would say just be very careful here. Let's wait maybe until Mars is coming into conjunction with your Venus, right? I think that you'll see some pretty significant changes like in November with Mars and Jupiter sitting on your Venus, because that means that, number one, you're going to be like the hit. You're going to be very social. There's going to be a lot going on with you professionally and career-wise. Mars rules partners. It's going to be conjunct Venus, which is you, and Jupiter is going to be there. So you're going to have your Jupiter return. You're going to have Mars and Venus in conjunction. It's going to be sextiling Venus in your sign, and then you're also going to see that this is going to be trining Saturn. They always say that you meet your partner wherever your 7th house Lord is. So you want to be watching for people who are either Leos, Pisces, or I would say Libras, because you have Mars in the 12th house at 5 degrees. It could be a combination of those 3 signs as well. In the 12th house, you might meet them at a hotel. You might meet them at night somewhere that's going to be near Libra things. So stuff where, you know, people are going and having date nights and couples or whatever. Maybe you go on a double date with like other people. That's very Libra. It can also mean that you meet them in a foreign land, or they could be culturally different in some way. Well, Pluto's trining that. So yeah, Saturn and Neptune are opposing, which is making it hard to find somebody, but Pluto's trining that. It's trying to get you to think about changing where you're living. Okay, so there's a sense of like, well, Pluto retrograde, do I get out of the house and start meeting people in a new way? And then you'll see Uranus get up to about 5 degrees this year. So this is going to be interesting. Uranus is also going to start trining your Mars, which could suddenly bring somebody in if you're traveling, right? So that would be sometime in early July, pretty much all the way until it comes out of the trine in November. I mean, have you thought about doing a stint in another country? Have you thought about maybe just traveling for a little bit, going back to school maybe? Maybe this can mean it's just, quite frankly, getting out of the house and doing something kind of different in terms of your routine. But I'm pretty confident next year, when you no longer see Saturn and Neptune in opposition to your Mars, and you begin to see Saturn go into your 7th house, which will be kind of next summer, and it begins stabilizing through a trine with your Venus and with Jupiter, you're gonna be in a relationship, girl. It's just, you know, you're a Venus retrograde. And with Venus, Mercury, Jupiter all in your 10th house, you're either very focused on what's going on with your career, work, and reputation, which is not a bad thing, or there is a sense of you focusing on community, right? Because this is your whole sign 11, community, connection with people. See, to me, this seems like the only way to kind of grow relationships is to really focus on surrounding yourself with other people who are also looking to meet people. It's very much Leo. It's kind of dating. The other way I could look at this is that, you know, from the perspective of being a Virgo, watch for the eclipse that's going to come at the end of August, because there's going to be an eclipse that's going to be in Pisces, and it looks like that's going to be right here around the 27th. And sure enough, the eclipse will actually be in your 5th house of romance and creativity, right? Making a trine to your Pluto, pretty wide, but it's there, and making a sextile to your 7th house, out of element, but it's a sextile, and it's squaring Uranus. See, this makes me feel like there may be some sudden unexpected changes in your love life that you didn't see coming. By looking at Jupiter and Venus and looking at the Cazimi in your 5th house, it does look like something's going to be changing with like your status, your social kind of connections, and that's probably going to bring up some opportunities for traveling and some excitement. And I do think relationships will get better. But I don't know if you've spoken to an astrologer before, but I would go and learn about having your 7th house ruler in the 12th. It means that you're not always going to see things so clearly with partners. Sometimes there's a feeling of like them kind of being like open enemies, or I guess hidden enemies in this case, because it's in this 12th. And then also having your natal Venus retrograde. But I know when Jupiter's on your Venus, you know, this year into next year, and it's trining your Saturn, relationships will improve. Go and learn about having your natal Venus retrograde too, because you're very different, or there is something unusual about the way that you do relationships. Sometimes when I see people who have like, you know, Libra rising and they have like a lot of Leo in their chart, or they have like retrogrades in Leo, they've told me that they have issues with like other people being, like other people committing, right? Because the 11th house could represent lovers of others. So you really want to watch, especially at the beginning of next year, when Mars is retrograding there, you know, somebody who maybe is dating another person meets you, and then you kind of get caught in the middle, right? Obviously, I hope I'm wrong. I'm going to knock on wood there, but other people can kind of intervene in relationships. You can meet somebody trying to get out of something, and you're like, what's the deal? Or, you know, you end up dating somebody, and then they're keeping their options open. So it's important to really communicate at the beginning of this next year. You know, are we friends, or are we something more? Are we dating other people? What's going on? To avoid some of the pitfalls that can kind of happen with like that 11th house stuff. Hopefully that's helpful. But I think it's really going to start to kind of like hit its stride, really kind of like spring going into summer next year. Once Saturn's in your 7th house, you'll start to see relationships really start to kind of solidify. All right, we've got Danielle, and then Grace, and then Rachel. What's up, Danielle? You should have seen how my mouth dropped when I read your message. Let me pull this up here. So Danielle is a Cancer rising. She's got Sun in Taurus, Moon in Aries. She was telling me, let me pull up her message here. In her message, that the Libra, somebody who she was going back and forth with for a while, came back into her life, and she needs a little guidance on how to navigate. What are his intentions? And she says he's still in a relationship. All right. I could be wrong, but I remember talking to you about this a very long time ago where I was like, look, when Saturn hits your moon and then it starts to retrograde, there is a possibility that somebody will come back, right? Because Saturn represents partners. And anything that deals with Venus too, because Venus is the past. So I don't know when he came back or what happened, but this has got me thinking about, let me go back. So maybe when Venus was conjunct Uranus, which could have been around the 23rd of April. Maybe it was when Venus was in conjunction to Saturn and Neptune, which was like in mid-March. So I don't know when this happened, but I mean, I'm not surprised. It just like lights your chart up like a Christmas tree. The thing that concerns me is that the relationships other people have is your first house, right? Because if other people are dating you, let's say, then the first house would be their relationships. Now, he's not dating you, he's dating someone else. And that would be the moon. So this is telling me with Saturn and Neptune hitting your moon, that he's connecting with you in an impulsive way, Aries. He's talking to you, 3, about his interest in connecting with you, Saturn moon. But there's a limiting and yet also secretive situation, Saturn Neptune, that's either holding him back emotionally or because of some kind of like living situation, right? So I could look at this and I could go, well, is he living with her and it's not going well and he feels stuck? And so there in turn, he's like wanting to connect with people from the past and he's being kind of secretive and selfish, right? I'm not judging you. It's just that's the nature of Aries. And it's opposing Jupiter and Saturn, which means that you're supposed to go, okay, I wanted to hear from you, but this doesn't feel good. Why haven't you dealt with your past relationship issues? What's the problem? And it's really showing me through the Saturn-Neptune opposition to Jupiter and also Saturn that I don't think he wants to be friends, personally. I think that he's looking for a solution or a way out, and he's trying to figure out how to do that. And I would be very, very careful knowing that you're also going to be having Neptune retrograde back on your moon. So this means that, you know, like he may not be telling you everything about his relationship. He can also go MIA and he can vanish because it's not just hitting your moon, it's opposing your Saturn. And there is a very good likelihood when you start seeing planets that are coming into a square with Saturn, that you're going to be like, I don't like this dynamic. And there's this feeling of you being like, if you're still dancing with the past, how am I supposed to like move forward and like have something with you? And like, don't take my word for it, you know, like watch what happens. As soon as you start seeing Venus coming into a square with Neptune, watch. So this is going to be like right around May 21st. Just like notice to see if something changes. Yeah, he goes MIA. Yeah, so you're going to see more of this. You're going to see this around like the 21st of May. You're going to see this when Venus squares Saturn. That'll be what, here? So the 28th. And then when Mercury squares is probably when he's going to dip out. So you will probably see him dip out in June. And then when Mercury retrogrades and it's retrograding and it's impacting your moon, it's going to be you being like either kicking yourself in June going into July, being like, why did I let him back in? Or feeling like you're trying to connect with him, but he's not connecting with you. Be very, 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 very careful. That's my advice. So much of my Cancer risings are learning this year that the Saturn transit in Aries is not just about your career. It's about you going, okay, well, how bad do you want to be in a relationship? If you want to be in a relationship that badly, then it's really about being a little bit more direct and assertive in terms of what your tolerance is going to be in relationships. And it also means that, you know, there needs to be a boundary that's created, like verbally revolving around, you know, talking, communicating, and seeing each other, and probably being like, look, when you figure your shit out, like when you're no longer in a relationship, you're not living in somebody else's house, like I would love to hear from you, right? She says he's going away from 10 days, Wednesday the 20th. Okay, so that's going to be in May or it's going to be in June? Because if it's in June going into July, like, yeah, that's the Mercury retrograde. You're not hearing from him. But the feeling that I'm getting is knowing that you're going to have Neptune in opposition to Saturn, you may be missing out on an opportunity to like meet someone new, you know, because you're still dancing with the past. And that's not judgment. That's just me giving you that warning. That's like, don't waste time on people who aren't necessarily ready for what you're ready for. Pluto's on your south node. So this is also about kind of dealing with this like kind of enticing, hypnotic, romantic connection that you have to the past, and like not knowing also how to let that person go. Now, you said that his birthday, and I'm not going to get into the whole like synastry of it, but I'm kind of curious looking at it. 10/3/81. Oh, so he's got his sun conjuncture Saturn. And he's also, I don't know what his rising sign is, but he's got the Saturn in opposition to his sun and his Saturn right now. So he's in his Saturn opposition. I mean, it's literally like he can't move forward and have, peaceful relationships while he's living with somebody, or he can't maintain his relationship because they're having like home and domestic squabbles, right? So Mars rules his relationships. He's got Mars in Leo. Jupiter's going to hit his Mars. That tells me that sometime over this summer, he's going to be trying to be friends with somebody again, but it could turn romantic come the beginning of the year, and then it's going to be messy. And because Mars represents his relationships and it's going to retrograde over Mars with Jupiter, he needs to be very careful because he's running some transits where if he's communicating and talking to somebody on social media or on a device or on a phone or whatever, the Mars retrograde can be about somebody coming across that information and like reading what's going back and forth and what's being said. And then it can cause like a whole like mess of problems. And unfortunately, with Mars being in a 19, it means that he does need to be friends with somebody before that he gets into a relationship. But he can also get into a relationship and then go back and try to stay friends with people while he's still in something. He's kind of like your kryptonite, Chiron on your Venus. Sun in opposition to your moon, you make a full moon. I know you understand him because you have similar kind of Libra placements, but my advice is to be very, very, very careful. Yes, people from the past are supposed to come back to you. You got Saturn retrograde in the 4th. But I think really with Pluto trine that right now, with Neptune opposing that right now, it's saying you have to take a stand. And you have to listen to what is going on with that Aries moon. Like you're very peaceful with all that Taurus and Libra and Cancer in your chart. But the Aries moon, do you not feel yourself just wanting to just be like direct in between the eyes and a little bit more kind of bold and like assertive with him? You should see that out in the world or dealing with your parents or, even with like things relating to your professional life. There is a sense of you being like very no bullshit. Saturn hitting your moon has to be the same thing in terms of how you're carrying yourself in your relationships. Why? Because you're working out of old patterns. And maybe he's coming around because, he misses you. I don't doubt that. But I think that there is some selfishness here of him not willing to acknowledge or accept that things aren't working in his relationship. And rather than working on it or leaving, he's looking for something outside of this relationship, that can like give him, the stimulus and like the kind of like attention that he potentially like needs, right? So my advice is until you start seeing, Saturn and Neptune making an opposition, out of an opposition with Saturn and off of your moon, you're not really going to know who or what is going to stick. And there's always going to be 3-party interference. So like he's dating her, you come in, you might be, meeting someone else, but you're like, what about him? So Neptune's not going to be out of that opposition until like roundabout April of next year. I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that with some of the stuff that I can see. But the problem is like, and I'm going to call a spade here. If that's really how he feels, right? Because Saturn is connected to his communication. Well, Saturn is in opposition to Pluto. So does he love you enough to go and make the changes he needs to make in his relationship? To get out, to separate, to divorce, to move? Like, what does he need to do? Because you also don't want to be the person that he's just kind of jumping back into it with, right? I don't really see you being in a place where you're full-fledged, ready to get back into the swing of like dating, probably until Venus retrogrades over your Juno. And I think you're doing yourself a disservice, possibly by holding space for somebody who's not willing to make some of the changes that he needs to make to be with you, knowing that Venus is going to retrograde over your Juno. Because if you're waiting for somebody significant to come through, that could be a transit that could do that, literally right around Halloween. So you can give him time. Right? Neptune's still going to be, retrograde over your moon. But I would say by the time you're getting to October, November, if he ain't ready, then you need to be the one who's really ready to bring in the new person. And Jupiter, being in Cancer, like with that Mercury retrograde, I would see, does he decide to start changing directions with that relationship? Because he might. but he may not be talking to you about it throughout the process. It's kind of like the vibe that I'm getting. So see what happens after the Mercury retrograde. If you're not talking to him as much or he goes MIA, I take a big step back. Don't let him play with your feelings with Neptune on your moon, because there can be this feeling of him being like, I am going to do these things. I am going to make these changes, but we want timelines with Saturn, right? We want to know that there's actually going to be actual definitive change. And this is such a strong period for you over the next couple of months. Like, not even just so much in terms of money, but knowing your worth, investing in yourself, like not wanting to be in relationships where you're playing games. Jupiter in, your second house with the North Node connection is just great for just knowing that you deserve to be treated better or to be valued. And that'll be trining Saturn as well. So you can really start to see the more that you're believing in that, the more you're acting in it, relationships are also going to kind of stabilize as well. The Mercury retrograde, so it's going to start on June 29th. Okay, right on your series. So that can be about being like where I have felt separate or kind of like apart from someone. And it's going to continue all the way into July 23rd, fully in your first house. And this is a time where your intuition is going to be very strong, because you're going to be picking up on things that you're like, I had a dream, or I had a feeling, or something changed. And it can be about the direction of what's going on with him and his relationships. I'd be more inclined to see what's going on if he makes these changes, and where you guys are actually standing come the end of summer going into fall, and whether or not there is an opportunity to literally reconnect while Venus and Mercury are retrograde in your fifth house of dating. And Venus is going to retrograde back into Libra. So it can bring a Libra back to you, and you could decide, where you stand from kind of October, November on. But not right now. Not right now. If you have to cut ties because he's kind of off and on with communication, do that. Back burner him and then see what happens at the end of summer. Be hopeful for somebody else new that's going to come in too. So there's a reason why some of his kind of plans are a little bit blurry, or he's not reliable with some of the things that are kind of changing with his relationship and his living situation, because somebody else is supposed to be coming in. You're supposed to be kept in the dark with him until you realize how to communicate. Hopefully that's helpful for you. I know that's like so disappointing. Like, you wait for like somebody to get their act together, and then they get their act together and they're like, yeah, but I'm in this relationship. I would be like, fuck you. Like, unless you have something to offer me, why are you coming back? Like, you want me to be your therapist? I mean, obviously, you have a lot of Taurus and Libra in your chart, so you're gonna be a lot nicer than me. All right. We have got, let's see, who else is on my list? All right, Grace, and Grace's Synastry, and then we're gonna have Rachel and Amy. All right, let's pull up Grace. And Grace, I got your email. I don't know if you're watching. All right, so there's Grace. And then let's look at Grace's partner. And it looks like you asked me to read out the ascendant and the descendant. So for you, Grace, I have you June 22nd, 1990. Oops, that's your husband. Here we go. Hold on. There we go. So you're June 22nd, 1990. And then it looks like that was at 11:40 p.m. in India. So I've got you Pisces rising, sun and moon in Cancer. And then for your husband, I have him December 26, 1990, 4:20 p.m. Wait a second. Was that the right time for both of you guys? Yeah. 4:20 p.m. And that was also in India. So for him, I've got Gemini rising with the sun in Capricorn and the moon in Aries. Okay. So to me, that looks right. Let's pull up your guys' info here. So Grace says, I'm joining this time live with my husband due to limitation in characters. Here's my question and my info. And then she says, we both live in Maryland. You're in Baltimore now in an apartment. And she says, we're both planning to buy a home this year. When will be the right time to look for a new home and to move to our new home this year? My husband job is good, but I tried multiple times to change my job, and I have a good pay that helps us with buying plan. However, there's always a block and there's always roles changing within the job that I'm in, and I don't like or enjoy that. But I'm not able to change the job to my liking with better pay. Is there a good or possible chance to buy a home this year for us? You're welcome. You're very welcome, Dispel. It's nice to see you. All right, so let's talk about this. I think being a Pisces rising right now, things are probably a little kind of like all over the place with what's going on with the home and the living situation. In particular, Grace, over like the next like month and a half. Okay, so the story goes, you're a Pisces rising, you're getting ready to see that Uranus is now in your whole sign 4th house, where there is sudden kind of changes and different paths and ideas and concepts that can kind of play out in regards to your living situation. And maybe it's like we could live in this city or that city. We could live in a townhome, or we could buy a condo or an apartment, or there's a duplex. You'll see multiple unit options that are going to kind of pop up. And you're also going to see over the next week, you're going to have, Mercury come into Gemini and conjunct Uranus. So that means there's a new opportunity, a new neighborhood, or a bright idea that's going to kind of pop up. And then you're going to see Mercury square the north and the south node, where you guys are like, well, do we want it to be in this city or even in this country, or are we making a change? Then you're going to see the north and south node square the sun at a 4 around May 25th. So lots of communication changes about home and family. And then you're going to see the north and the south node square Uranus. My advice is I would not buy anything with any of these transits. I wouldn't buy anything. Because it's obvious to me that there's so many different other areas you guys should be looking at. There's a lot of communication that needs to go on regarding what part of the city do we need to be in, what's going to make sense for our commute, yada, yada. And then you need to see the north and the south node square Uranus, which is actually happening at a money degree. So it's happening at 2. So it's also, what can we afford? What's going to be the best bang for our buck? When do we feel like we have the financial kind of stability to do this? You might say, hey, I can do it now. But the truth is that ownership of land is going to be your 2nd house, right? Mars and Saturn are conjunct. I personally can't recommend buying something until Saturn is coming into conjunction with your Mars, which is going to be closer to next spring. All right, so let's move forward a little bit. As a Cancer, you guys are having, Mercury retrograde in your sign. So you're going to see at the end of June, Mercury is going to be retrograding back from your 5th house into your 4th house. And a lot of this is like a reassessment in regards to, well, what's going to make me happy at home. You guys might start talking about having kids if you don't have kids. Sometimes there could be finding out there's a pregnancy with like Mercury and Jupiter in the 5th. Maybe it's just a matter of you guys going, if we're not having kids immediately this year, can we stay here for another year? Do we really need to buy a house right now, or do we need to move? Or it could be, hey, you know what? If that is the goal, how is that influencing like where we're living? So that'll pop up. And then my advice is to be more open to exploring new parts of the city and looking at new places at the beginning of July. And you may feel inclined to be like, hey, we want to buy something, in July or August, because you're going to have Saturn retrograding away from your Mars, and Mars that's going into your 4th house. Although I still think that it's probably going to be expensive, or it's still probably going to be at the top, because I do think that the top of the market's going to be over the summer. But could you do it with Mars going into your 4th house, hitting your sun and your moon? Yeah, sure, you could do that. You don't want to do it when it's squaring Neptune, though. So you'd want to do it sometime in early August, not late August. And then down the road, Mars will retrograde. So the problem that I have looking at your chart is that if you buy a property and you don't have job stability, which you may not have at the beginning of next year, or there may be some change or some layoffs and things going on. I know things people don't want to hear. I would be concerned about getting into a home unless you felt like you had enough kind of like money, in savings or a rainy day fund to ensure that you guys could cover the expenses. That's what I think. And I think you're much smarter, unless you find something that's like an amazing deal at the beginning of August, waiting until Saturn comes into conjunction with your Mars and it's trining Jupiter. So buying in like March, April, May of next year, I think is a much smarter move. I think Saturn hitting your Mars at 16 is definitely going to be about buying a home and property. And you're going to feel, I think, a little bit better settled just with work and your routine, that you feel like you can swing it, right? So that's your chart. And like, obviously being a Cancer sun and moon, having Saturn and Neptune just like squaring everything, you know, it's a lot of like, what do I want? I don't know. And it's forcing you to get more serious about buying land, so that way you feel like you can kind of get, you know, grounded and rooted. For your partner, he's a Gemini rising. He's having eclipses in the 4th house. So one thing that I was thinking about when I was looking at your chart is I was like, you guys might buy a house that you think you like, and then your husband ends up not liking it. And I could see that with the retrograde. That would be, you know, starting in your 6th house. Technically, your whole sign 7th into your 6th house. This is saying a lot of the same thing. So Mercury rules his home in this chart, and his obviously his rising sign. And he's got Mercury retrograde at 29 degrees. So really, your husband is at the mercy of whatever you decide. And he's probably like laughing listening to this, because Mercury retrograde in, you know, at 29 degrees of Sagittarius is like somebody who has big dreams and big ideas. Like, let's move away. Let's move to this other country. Let's do this thing, or, you know, whatever. And you can be very indecisive with that 29 degrees about where you want to live, how you want to live, you know, your career, all that stuff. So the last 2 years with like Saturn and Neptune squaring that has not been the time to buy a house or to get situated. And it also hasn't been the time because there's been, well, retrogrades and eclipses that have been kind of going on in Virgo. So what you want to watch for is probably when there are some positive transits to his Mercury. So for example, when Jupiter and the Sun start kind of trining Mercury, so the end of August, you'll also see that there's going to be a Mercury Cazimi. So there may be an opportunity to kind of have a little bit more clarity about your home life at the end of August. And then Jupiter and Mars will begin trining Mercury, which could be an ideal time to be considering moving or buying a property. I mean, it trines Saturn, it trines his moon. The only issue that I have is that Venus and Mercury are going to be retrograde. So it can be highlighting where there are some changes going on, either with his work or with his schedule, which does not kind of mesh well with potentially moving like in November. And then if we look at the time that I was recommending, where I was like, maybe do it closer to like April, May of next year, by then the Mars retrograde is over in his 4th house. Like, he may move and then move again, or you guys may move and you might have issues with the home, or you might have to renovate something. That also makes me feel like there's the potential where you guys may have to like go back home and visit family for some reason, because Mars talks about that. And like, I know you guys aren't born here. I can see that based off of your birth information. But if you guys are not citizens when you're having retrogrades, you know, in your 4th house, in your 3rd house, you know, there could be issues going on with like stability and work and visas, right? So I would wonder, you know, if you guys are citizens and you're here, cool, then that's not something you have to worry about. But I would look at his chart being like, oh, there could be some issues if he's not employed, and potentially be able to stay here and buy property. So you want to make sure that that's all like super solid. If this were me looking at both of the charts, I would not feel comfortable telling either one of you guys to buy a property this year. I think that one of the two of you, specifically him, might have some job changes at the end of the year. He may not be crazy about the house that you buy, and you may not realize it until later. And then you guys will be talking about, well, how do we get out of this? Well, Mars is going retrograde at the beginning of 2027. Why not stay where you are, right? And a lot of people are like, oh, well, I don't want to keep renting. It's like, okay, well, how are you going to feel if you buy a house for $500,000 and in the next year it's worth $100,000 less? Because you could see some of that stuff happening. And if you're okay with it and you don't care, then that's fine. But I would probably say aim for trying to get into buying something, you know, the end of March, maybe into April. Okay, you're citizens. Okay, so then that's fine. Knowing that he's a Gemini, though, and that he's going to have a Mercury and a Venus retrograde in his 6th house, look at what happened in the fall of last year, right? Mercury, his time lord, went retrograde at work, right, in the 6th house. And Mars was there as well, so I think that was part of it, or maybe there was some irritation with work. But career-wise, other than some of the retrogrades in the fall, he's got a period where he may actually see some positive growth in his reputation at work. He's going to have a eclipse in his 10th house at the end of August. It's going to be squaring Uranus, so it might mean that he's having to train, travel. You know, there's going to be some kind of aspect that's kind of like a little bit more exciting connected to his career. And things look like they're going to be quite positive for him, like work-wise, both with like his Jupiter return, but also because he's going to have eclipses in his 10th house. If there's going to be anything that's going to happen, I think it's like, you know, it would be the Mercury and the Venus retrograde in the 6th house. If he's sick and having to take time off, if there's something that's going on with a family member where you have to be there to support a family member elsewhere, If there's something that's going on where there's some layoffs, these are the kind of things that you kind of want to look for basically in the fall. And then just to give myself peace of mind, because I have told you like, oh, I would do this next spring, let's see how it looks in your composite chart. So together, you guys are a Taurus rising, okay? You have your sun in Aries, and you have your guys' moon in Taurus. So your 4th house deals with your moon. Uranus has been on your moon the last couple of years, hasn't been the time to buy. You maybe didn't know where you were going to get settled in. Here comes your Jupiter return in the 4th house where you're like, yes, we're ready for work, right? For home changes. But this is going to oppose Pluto in the 10th. See, what happens if one of you guys has a job change or gets offered a job in another location? That may potentially change everything. Or if there's a transfer or something like that, that could happen over the summer. That would make you go, well, do we want to move to this other city? And then we need to see something going on with your moon. So I'm thinking like, there's the Mars retrograde that's going to go into your fourth house, which is not good for your living situation. And then it's going to come back into a trine with Saturn. And you're obviously buying in a foreign land. You guys weren't born here. So like with Mars and Jupiter trining Saturn, I mean, I would honestly say you're better off trying to do this like April, May of next year. That's what I think. I would try to avoid all the retrogrades in general that are kind of going on in the 4th house. And a lot of where you're living is being dictated by where you're working. So, you know, if you guys are able to stay in the same area, great. Maybe start looking at neighboring neighborhoods and places that might be close to where you're at now, feeling it out, taking a look at, you know, in June into July, the surrounding areas with where you currently live. Drive around, check it out, look at some places. You could even hire a real estate agent. Mercury could be an agent and you could be like, hey, this is what we're looking for. The problem is that, you know, Mercury's going to retrograde square Saturn, where you're not always going to be able to, because of work, be able to go and do the viewings. You might have to be doing it after work. You're going to have to do it on the weekends. You might be a little disgruntled, even if you're looking for properties, because you're going to feel like you're not going to find what you want. And I don't really think that energy starts to even remotely get cleared up until the eclipses that are going to be in your 4th house. That'll be at the end of August. So unless you find something the very beginning of August, I would really wait until about April of next year. And I would just keep in mind that you're a Pisces rising, so Uranus going into your 4th house means that by whole sign standards, there's about to be a lot of changes going on with your living situation. You may not see that for a little while. That may still be a couple of years. You guys might be settled here now, but there's probably going to be either another move or a significant change with your family dynamic coming in 2029, you know, 2030, when Saturn and the South Node are coming into your 4th house. So you still have a little bit of time before some of these changes happen. But ask yourselves this, right? 2030 sounds like it's a long way away. It's not. I mean, it's like 3.5 years, right? I look at this and I go, does it make sense for you guys to do something that's smaller, more conservative, more affordable, right? Something that maybe you guys would hold on to, but when you get to a point, if you guys do decide that you're upgrading, maybe you have kids, maybe, you know, you want to move to another location, you could use this transit in about 3.5, 4 years to be like, now we're moving into the bigger space. If you feel like you absolutely have to own something right now. Yeah, no, I'd buy next year in the spring. And if you do it, it needs to be at the beginning of August. Okay. And I would not buy anything during the Venus retrograde or the Mars retrograde. So like October, November, no. Like January, basically until the beginning of April, no. If you're going to buy something, it's after April 15th, or you're going to be buying something the first 2 weeks of August. And like I said, think about where you're going to be in 3 to 5 years. Because you could get something that's smaller, more conservative now, and you could have what you absolutely need and that you own, but you're still going to end up moving here in about 3.5, 4 years. There's still going to be a home change that's going to happen. So if knowing that that's going to happen, and I see it in both of your charts, might be worthy of just being like, yeah, like we can get into something that's more of like a duplex or a condo. Like, you know, Pisces risings, they like things that are kind of like units, or like where there's multiple kind of houses or, you know, units that are on a property. Don't believe me, watch what happens. You guys are going to have some really interesting conversations over the next week or two, where the frame of mind is kind of shifting in terms of what your living plan is. And I don't think you need astrology to kind of look at what's going on with the housing market. You guys are about to see over the next couple of months where things are going to dramatically change pricing wise, I believe, just because of some of the retrogrades that are going to happen in Cancer. And like notoriously, when we have the North Node in Aquarius, it's always been the bottom of the market. So people don't realize that right after we have all this euphoric highs in August, the North and the South Node have changed. So we're going to see a lot of things changing with the market. And go back and look at what happened in like 2008 and also in like 2000, you know, when we had these cycles, we had a lot of issues going on with the market, which always impacted things that were connected to housing, jobs, you know, and the economy. So be smart. Pricing wise, go good or bad in the next week? I mean, I could see where you're going to want to do this because Venus is going into your 4th house, but it's going to square Neptune, which means you're going to fall in love with something, but you're not going to recognize or realize that there could be something wrong with it. And once it squares Saturn, you're going to realize at the end of the week, by the end of the month, like the 28th, it's out of your price range. So you're going to be dealing with some price range issues or some things that are connected to, you know, being able to kind of get like lending. Like Mars is squaring Pluto and it's going to oppose Pluto in your 8th house. I mean, you're going to pay like insane interest rates. Everybody's waiting right now because the Fed chair is about to change. We're waiting to see what's going to happen now that we have somebody new coming in. I personally don't know if they're going to cut interest rates. Like everybody's hoping. Like I don't think that's going to happen, and I think people are going to react to that. But I would not be remotely even looking, right, until Venus comes out of the square with Saturn. So you should be looking at the beginning of June on. Yeah, he supports your decisions. I can see that. And like things are going to get easier with your decisions now that you're having like, you know, Jupiter trining, you know, Mercury. You'll see that throughout this next year. But make sure you do thorough inspections of anything you look at. That's my advice, because there's going to be some things that you think that you're going to see and then you're going to realize, oh, we don't like the neighbors. Oh, you know, there's issues with this, and you can try to negotiate. But that small window would be only the first 2 weeks of August that I would personally buy this year. Otherwise, I would say stay tight for another year and then try to do that in the spring. Hopefully that's helpful. You got a cool husband that he's willing to listen to all of this rambling. So. All right. Who else do we have here? So we've got Rachel, Amy, and then Mia. Central time. We always start at 6 p.m. Central. So 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. That's when we start. But yeah, we've been here for 2 hours now. All right, so let's get going with Rachel and then Amy. What's up, Rachel? You got a birthday coming up? I think that's what I saw in your comment. Oh, well, we're live here every Friday. Make sure you're subscribed so you can see the alerts. We're always here at the same time. Next week's going to be tarot. This week's astrology. Whenever it's a new moon or a full moon, I always answer questions like live on the channel. And then tarot are the other weeks, which is kind of fun. All right, well, let's pull up Rachel's question here. But I know that she said she has a birthday coming up. Rachel's a Libra rising, sun in Taurus, and moon in Libra. Wow, so you've had the Uranus stuff and the new moon on your birthday. So it sounds like you know what's going on. There we go. So Rachel says, hi, just wanted to get a reading for my birthday tomorrow and this new phase of my life to come. Thank you. All right, here's the deal, Rachel. New moon, new you, right? So when you have a new moon birthday, this basically means that it's a fresh like slate for like the next year. And so if you have astrological software or anything like that, I would scan ahead and I would go and look at what year you're going to have a full moon around your birthday. That's like around 25, 26, 27 degrees of Taurus, because sometimes it takes a couple of years to kind of have that fully kind of bloom. But I have found with new moon birthdays, it's almost like the weeks leading up, it feels like everything kind of flushes out. We're clearing a lot of things out. It can also mean that there is a sense of you clearing all that stuff out because you're reevaluating and reassessing what things you want to do new in this next year. Now, you were born in 1989. So the good news is now that you have moved into this new year, as of tomorrow, you're going to be moving into what's going to be a Scorpio second house annual perfection year. Now, this is based off of whole signs, which I don't usually do. But for this prediction method, we kind of see that each year there's a certain house that gets highlighted. So for example, the last year you've been super focused on Venus related things, right? Your first house, relationship to yourself, maybe traveling, maybe learning, things connected to education, publishing, because you have Venus that's in your 9th. So this year you're going to be more Okay, second house is money, resources, possessions, self-esteem. And you have your natal Mars in Cancer in your 10th house. So on your birthday, or I guess right after your birthday, you're going to have Mars and Venus coming into conjunction. First of all, that's good for your love life. That's good for making money. That's good for selling art. That's good for being seen. You also really need to watch what's going on with Mars transits this year. Okay, so like the Mars-Pluto square, where there could be some drama over creativity, love, and money. Down the road when Mars goes into Cancer and you have your Mars return, or when Mars is squaring Saturn, those are things that you're going to want to be watching for. But I can see that having your natal Mars in the 10th house, this is going to be a year where you're more focused on like feeling like, okay, I'm doing work that feels more emotionally in alignment for me. Maybe you feel more productive when you feel like emotionally secure and like safe. And kind of the highlight reel would be around the 28th when you have the Mars-Venus transit, probably when Mars comes into Gemini and it conjuncts Uranus, where there could be some fun, unexpected travel around 4th of July. When Mars meets your Venus, where there could be traveling and romance going on also in early July. And great for publishing, you know, creative kind of breakthroughs around mid-July. And then you're going to want to watch when Mars goes into Cancer. This is going to be your Mars return right here around the 27th of August. And Mars will be in your 10th house of work, opposing Saturn and Neptune, squaring Saturn, where you're like in work mode. And there's a lot of work stuff that's going to be going on in August, where you're just feeling like you have to kind of sidebar what's going on with like family or home stuff and even relationship stuff to just kind of chug ahead with your career. And then things really start to get interesting when Venus goes into your 2nd house of money, Mars goes into your 11th house of goals. I see like a lot of like reworking your finances, rebranding things, maybe starting a new company, maybe collaborating with other people. Be mindful of the Venus and the Mercury retrograde in your 2nd, if it's in your 2nd house year, because it tells me that you might actually feel like you're doing work in a way where you're releasing a bunch of things at one time, and then you're turning within, and then you're like, okay, now I'm going to go back to like working on my stuff, and then you're going to have probably another release that's going to be in the spring. So watch for like the big drops that can be happening in like October into November. And then there is going to be with the Mars retrograde time to kind of like take a step back, focus on healing or creating, so that way you can release something probably like in March going into April that looks like it's going to be well received. But anytime you have a 2nd house year, especially in Scorpio, it's like with those retrogrades, like if you're supposed to have a change in your financial situation, a change in your style, even in the way that you create, you're going to be deep in that this year. I'm born in 1989, just like you. So I know that I'm going to be going through those retrogrades in my 2nd house. And I've been thinking a lot about that. And I'm like, well, yeah, like money could be tight, or, you know, I'm not going to be spending as much. Maybe I'm not going to be working as much. And I would just say, go back, like think about what happened in 2018, like in the fall of 2018. That was the last time we had that Venus retrograde in Scorpio. I remember, you know, and I knew the retrograde was coming, being like, oh, I'm going to take 6 weeks or 8 weeks off of work and I'm going to travel. So I worked all summer, saved a bunch of money so I could take that time off. You may do something similar. Just watch with any big expenses, you know, and purchases maybe that you're going to be making around that time. I would hold off, or any changes to your physical appearance or like your style. I wouldn't do that because there could be some losses there. But for a lot of my Libra risings, things that they've lost, whether it's like, you know, through trading, you know, Stephanie was talking about that, relationships, you know, financial losses, I think there's a lot of opportunity for things to be regained. And so you may start to actually see that October and November, it's getting worked out. And then by the end of November, like actually finances are actually looking pretty good. So you have to let me know what happens. Obviously your Mars year, you know, with Mars at a 10, it's like you're out there, you're in it to win it. With Mars trine Pluto, I don't think anything's going to be able to stop you. You know, I think that this is just going to be something where you're just really intuitively and emotionally leaning into what you know you want and what you value. And then obviously Uranus hitting your Mercury and your Venus is going to be interesting too. Get ready for just a lot of like wanderlust and maybe exploring, creating and sharing stuff in a new way, you know, publishing stuff, anything that's like about getting your art out there, or anything that you're working on that you want to share with people, and new teachers and mentors that can kind of come into your life too. With Uranus going through your 9th house is also very likely. So I'm curious. I'm very curious. I don't know where you're actually living, but let me just take a sneak peek at your at your return. I'm going to look at it from your natal location because you can do that. It's very accurate looking at it that way. Yep. Okay, so that's 2025. So let's look at the next one. So the new moon actually lands in your 9th. So teaching, traveling, publishing. There you go. Venus in the 10th. Venus is the second house lord. So diversifying something about your assets this year. And then Mercury is the ruler. Mercury is conjunct the moon and the sun. So your goals in regards to traveling, belief, art, romance, relationships. This is all sextiling Jupiter. So growth when it comes to, you know, the money you make from work, but also friends and social connections. And then obviously this new moon has the sun, moon, and Mercury. So it's a great, I mean, I would probably do something where you're planning either higher education or travel this year. And I would set those intentions around your birthday. What are you learning about how you can change and diversify something about your career? Because Mercury is tied to both Venus and Uranus that are kind of in your 10th house one way or another, whole sign or Placidus. And Mars conjunct Chiron is also healing issues when it comes to like intimacy and vulnerability. Saturn, Neptune in your 7th house is about working through relational dynamics. But this is a year where your philosophy about relationships, life, money is all going to change. And I would say take a cooking class, take a design class, focus on maybe traveling for education as well if that's something that you're interested in doing. Sounds like you might be traveling around your birthday, or there's something that's going to be seated where there's going to be that kind of coming up for you in the fall. I hope you have a happy birthday. It's such a cool birthday with all that stuff lining up. All right, we have got Amy and then Mia and then Durian. I'm just playing catch up here. One decision for us is yes, we want to get pregnant this year. I hope when the time is right, I can come to you. But Grace, get pregnant first. You can move whenever you want. Part of what's going on is there's this fear of like what's going on with the pregnancy and like whether or not it makes sense to get pregnant first or to move. Like just get pregnant. Jupiter's in your 5th house. Focus on getting pregnant right now. You figure out the living situation at a later time. Trust me on this. You want to use Jupiter while it's in your 5th house because it's making aspects and it's making trines to your ascendant, and you're going to have an eclipse there that's going to be, you know, in August on your ascendant. So like, yeah, you might find out you're pregnant and not know where you're going to land, but I think that's probably going to be more important right now with some of the transits that you're having. Baby dust. All right, we've got Amy, and then we've got Mia. Sorry guys, I'm trying to balance everything up here. Feeling all the Uranus stuff. It's making me kind of frazzled. All right, so we've got Amy. Amy Stevens. Is this the right Amy? Hold on. No, I don't think this is the right Amy. Hold on. Amy. Did I not save that chart? Was it this one? Sorry guys, give me 1 second. And that was April 21st, 87. There we go, Amy. All right, Amy. April 21st, 87. I have you at 5:30 p.m. in Saudi. All right, so I want to make sure that's right. Yeah. Okay, so she's a Libra rising, Sun in Taurus, Moon in Aquarius. She says, what should I expect under the influence of this new moon in the up and coming few months, especially when it comes to health and relationships? All right, so just a couple thoughts. The new moon doesn't really have much at all in your chart to do with relationships, like at all. And it doesn't have anything really to do with health either. So I could see why that's a concern of yours, and we'll address that in a second. But just for your awareness, the new moon that's happening is in your 8th house. Now, okay, planting new seeds for emotional healing, psychological healing, going to therapy, detoxing, clearing and cleansing things out. Sure, yeah. I mean, Venus is your ruler. So what you're going to see is at the time of this new moon, it's in your 8th house, but Venus is in the 9th. So it's like, how do I make money and travel? Or how do I invest in higher education? Or how does travel change my philosophy or my mindset? And Venus is kind of trining your ascendant, so that's nice. The moon is also sextiling your natal Venus, which, okay, it's in your 6th house. So where you maybe become aware of some unhealthy habits, what you need to clear out, detox, kind of remove from your life, what skeletons in the closet, you kind of need to deal with, and how that can give you better emotional health, right? Venus in Pisces. So that's really the only thing that I could see it being kind of tied to relationships or health. Relationships are more Mars, and Mars is going through your 7th house right now. It's about to hit your sun, so that can definitely bring somebody in. So maybe keep an eye out for like the next week or so with Mars crossing your sun. I mean, if you have a client-based business, if you have to work with partners or business partners, or you have to give presentations, it could just be a little bit more kind of busy, socially. But you're kind of getting your butt kicked a little bit in relationships. I mean, the North Node is getting hit with Saturn, so that means that something needs to dramatically change with friendships or relationships. A lot of it is scheduling and work or professional relationships as well. And then Saturn's coming into conjunction with Mercury, where you can be dealing with people who aren't communicating very well. Followed by, Pluto retrograde for the next couple months, which is squaring your sun, where you're kind of like, I need something to change at home and dramatically improve relationships, which there are some power struggles there. And then Chiron's going to hit your sun. Honestly, to me, this screams like you can be getting your feelings hurt because you're going back and forth with people who you're meeting and you want there to be relationship development, but there's people who are wounded or they're not communicating well or they're entertaining other people and you're just kind of like, what is going on? Like, what is the problem? Until you have a positive Mars transit, you're not really going to see a lot change with your romantic relationships. So we need to see like when Jupiter starts sextiling Mars, so that'll be in August. When Pluto starts trining your Mars, so that's going to kind of kick up in 2027. And then when Saturn comes into your 7th house, like relationships really start to kind of solidify as you're getting into like next spring. Once Saturn's fully going into your 7th house and you're able to start to see that the structure of relationships and communication and commitment are improving. But Saturn in your 7th house next year, Chiron on your sun this year, Pluto coming into conjunction with your moon this year. I mean, everything's going to hit for you next spring. The North Node's going to hit your Juno. That's just going to be like slam dunk. The problem is that a lot of Libra risings are kind of feeling like with their relationships with other people, they either don't see them very clearly, or there are some Libra risings who are just not wanting to be diplomatic and kind of work things out with others. So it takes two to tango. It's not necessarily just other people having issues. It can be, your inability to kind of be flexible and kind of receptive. I also think anybody who's got Venus in the 6th house, these are people who are fixers. They want to heal. They want to fix people. They're willing to overlook some of, other people's kind of shortcomings. But Saturn and Neptune conjunct your Venus over the last couple of years should have kind of taught you or shown you that where you're constantly taking care of other people, whether that's romantically, family, or like work-wise, and you're not taking care of yourself, like things fall apart, right? Like you can start to realize that, you're putting other people kind of ahead of yourself. So I'm assuming you're done with that now that Saturn and Neptune are off of there. I'd be more focused about your health, your lifestyle, and your work with Saturn and Neptune sitting on your North Node and your Jupiter and your Mercury. And developing healthier relationship habits, and then look forward to some of the things that are going to be changing more so like next year in the spring. Over the next 6 months, that new moon in Taurus might materialize as, probably having better awareness of your financial situation or feeling a little bit more safe or secure, within yourself. So we can fast forward, we can look at this become a full moon. This will be a full moon in mid-November of 2020. Oops, that's 2027. Hold on. It'll become a full moon in, there we go, end of October. So the 25th of October on your sun. So that's a good signal for relationship changes. But it's ruled by Venus, and Venus is retrograde. So this means that you're basically giving it until October of this year to be like, how are relationships going to shake out? maybe there is a big turning point in relationships and you're trying to decide whether or not it actually works for you. But it looks to me like with the full moon squaring Pluto, that it's going to be like you going, okay, like if we've been dating X amount of time, are we moving to the next phase? Are we meeting family? Are we talking about commitment? You know, is somebody moving? So there's going to be a bit of like a make or break situation in a relationship. That's probably going to be happening in October. And then next year, it's going to be even more significant once Saturn is actually going into your 7th house. So this is just more about personal transformation, finances, healing things, detoxing things, and where maybe having more of like a routine, you know, a physical routine can be good for you emotionally or psychologically. And also starting to think about ways that you can maybe save money or spend money or feel like you can kind of travel or expand. I think those are going to be like the major highlights. All right. Who else do we have here? So we've got your friend, Mia. So that's cool of you. You got her a reading too. Let me pull her up. So she is March 28th, 1980. I just want to double check, make sure this is right here. And she should be a Virgo rising, moon in Virgo, sun in Aries. And she says, this is for Mia. What do you see under the influence of the new moon in the up and coming months, especially with relationship and career? So if we look at the new moon, it's definitely, I think for her, more going to be about her career. Let's look at that. Because you're going to see where the new moon is, it's going to put the ruler Venus in the 10th house. So for Mia, what she's seeding, and this is a beautiful new moon for her. It's conjunct her Venus. So she's investing more, I think, in her beliefs. She's shifting something about her values. She's starting to feel more optimistic about work and her career, Venus in the 10th. And this is trining her Saturn and her ascendant. To me, it almost looks like she's kind of looking at things going, how can I do more of what I love? Because Saturn rules her 5th house of love. How can I either travel more, create more, feel more inspired, be able to teach, expand, publish? I mean, some of you guys are also contemplating where you can grow your careers through training, certification, or, you know, some kind of education at work. Like if you're feeling burnt out and you feel like you need a change at work, it's like, okay, well, is it time to explore like another avenue in terms of like the kind of job that you can be working? Can there be more pleasure that can come from work with Venus in the 10th? Yeah. A lot of my Virgo risings are going to have some pretty dramatic career changes. I mean, and she's probably already seeing it because Uranus has been in and out of Gemini for like the last year. Right now, Uranus is back in Gemini. Tell her to watch my astro weather this week because I talk about all the things happening, especially for the Mercury ruled charts where, you know, the Sun, Mercury, Uranus, you know, are all going through Gemini and it's going to square the north or south nodes. So she's kind of at a career crossroads, and I think she's just trying to figure out what she can do that she enjoys, that she feels optimistic about, and that also can like make her money. She's very practical. She's got a lot of earth in her chart. I also think with Uranus going through her 10th house now pretty soon, squaring her Jupiter and also her moon, she's having some changes in relationships. She's having some changes with her friends, you know, and maybe she's feeling a little restless and that she wants to kind of do something different, or there's like a side hustle that's kind of coming up. Really the big changes that I think that are going to be happening more, at least for her, like when it comes to her career, are going to be probably the beginning of July. So when Mars and Uranus meet, you'll have another opportunity also because Mars is going to retrograde. It looks like right over her moon and her Jupiter. So there could be some personal changes going on there in her life when it comes to her career and her purpose in early January. And this new moon will become a full moon here when she has a full moon in Taurus. So that's going to be happening in her 8th house at a money degree. It's opposing a retrograde in her 2nd. You got to tell her to be really careful with making sudden shifts in regards to her career this year. It's almost like things don't really start to get stable until Uranus is out of a square with her Mercury. So I could see her wearing multiple hats. I could see her, you know, trying to kind of pivot into something else. But when this full moon comes in, it's all about like money that's owed, money that's due, paying taxes, dealing with expenses and debt. And you want to just tell her to be very cautious with some of her financial dealings in the fall, not be doing anything like dramatic, like, you know, changing her career on a whim, unless she really knows that she has security. She will see a job opportunity that will probably pop up around the full moon in August. So whether that's taking a new position, going to another department, you know, maybe it's gonna be about going into a different field altogether. But that eclipse that's going to trine Mars makes me feel like, you know, she might be considering taking another position. And having 20 on her midheaven, she's always going to have her job change a lot. And I've never met a Virgo rising that didn't have a day job and then be like, well, I do this too, right? Like I see people who have like full jobs. They work 40 plus hours a week and they're like, but I'm also a photographer and I also am a dog walker and I've got my own side hustle. It's like crazy. You guys just can't stay still. And now what you guys are going to learn with Uranus going into Gemini is that if you want to make this shift, you have to make the time for it. So there's going to be changes in your existing job or your existing schedule, and like the impacts that can have on you, like stress wise, is what I would watch for. Jupiter is more relationships. I mean, the South Node is hitting Jupiter. To me, she's either going to reconnect with somebody from the past briefly in June, or there's going to be somebody new who's going to be coming into her life that's going to be reconnecting with her. Either somebody new who's a soulmate or somebody who's reconnecting with her, who could be a foreigner. And you'll see this pretty much like the beginning of November. And then that's going to be running until more or less about March of next year. But relationship stuff will get more serious when Saturn is like direct on her sun. And it looks like she can be dealing with people who are kind of in and out this year, where they're either, you know, traveling or they're away or there's some distance. And it looks like she's having to really ask herself, like, is that what I want? You know, I think between having her sun in the 7th house and, you know, that does kind of indicate she's attracted to foreigners or people who are culturally different. But it can also mean that she attracts people who are like lost or they don't know like what they need. Jupiter hitting her Mars, South Node under Mars, like nothing really stabilizes in her love life for a little bit. I would focus more on career. I'm not going to say you can't meet people, but I would want to see, you know, the Mars retrograde complete because you're going to have several Mars returns. So that tells me there's going to be several changes with your relationship. You'll start seeing it kick up in November. You're going to see another one that's going to be kicking up right around February. And then the final return is going to be around May. And by the time you see that over, I think you'll have a better understanding of what you want. And then the next phase is she's got Neptune conjunct her sun. I mean, this is somebody who would really, really benefit talking to an astrologer, a therapist, a coach, somebody who can give her guidance, because she can oftentimes feel kind of like clouded or confused with her relationships. And that's really kind of coming up in her chart, especially this year. Career-wise, well, though, I think this is a wonderful moon to start kind of getting outside of the box and thinking about different ways that you can actually enjoy doing what you're doing. But I would recommend her to be very careful with people who are coming and going out of her like love life later in the fall. Hopefully that's helpful for you, Mia. And thanks, Amy, for getting her reading. That's cool. All right, so we've got Durian. You have been so patient, and I know you were the last one to get in. I appreciate it. I have to ask you, did you have like a specific person in mind that you wanted to look at? I saw your comment. Hold on a second. Hold on, Amy sent me something else. In relationship with me, you can touch on the scenario between us without making it obvious. It would be great. If not, just read both individuals. Is there... I don't know if that's going to be possible, Amy. I can do it, but... I can do it. Durian, hold on one second. Here's what I'll tell you. Okay, so Amy, this is your chart, Libra, right? So we talked a little bit about, you know, like Pluto coming in for the square with your sun, and that there's going to be some like relational issues and problems that are going to be going on the home front and with relationships. And that your chart is ruled by Mars, and like, you know, Mars in the 8th house can definitely have its hangups when it comes to relationships, finances, or intimacy. And then putting the other planets on the outside, this is theirs. Pluto sits on the ascendant retrograde. So it's like a powerful attraction, draw, it's transformative. Neptune's conjunct Saturn, so that does represent issues with communication and clarity, and sometimes having some cultural differences and not being able to understand those cultural differences because they're in Sag, especially in how you guys communicate and connect over like family, siblings, travel, values, religion. Sun conjunct Jupiter and Mercury, you know, so it can be somebody who feels like faded or somebody who's here to help kind of bring you kind of growth. Venus in the 8th house, which can be difficult because that does talk about a lot of transformation in relationships, vulnerability, and also values, like changes in the way that you look at like relationship values. Juno on the midheaven is good for partnership and compatibility, especially like long-term partnership, you know, romantic or professional in the 10th house. And then you've got all these planets that are sitting in the 11th house, which represents friendship, connection, compatibility in terms of your goals, you know, your social life, like all of that stuff. And then when you flip this around, like I'm never crazy about, I always look for planets on an angle. So like Pluto catches my eye. I'm not crazy about Saturn Neptune connections because I feel like communication wise there can be some things that you guys don't see so clearly. I think, you know, being a Libra rising, bringing somebody in that's got Aries, you know, it does represent the person that you attract, but that person is clearly going through a lot of changes right now where, you know, from their perspective with like Saturn and Neptune having sat on their sun, that there is this like crisis in a relationship or a dynamic where some things may be hidden or they may not be visible, or there's some kind of things that you're needing to work out in terms of like insecurities or fears in relationships. You guys have a lot of 8th house stuff, which talks about going deep and like vulnerability, but also relationships that deeply, deeply transform you. Moon in the 5th house is nice for romance. So there's definitely a connection here. Like, you know, looking at the moon in the 5th house and Venus, Jupiter, and Mercury in the 7th is pretty good compatibility. I think one of the biggest things that I would say about this dynamic is not always seeing each other clearly. Like you guys are there to support each other and teach each other about growth and relationship and support, but both of you guys have your own hangups in terms of like relationships and problems from the past, right? And so maybe it's about working through that and like learning whether or not you guys can like trust each other after some of the issues that have happened in previous relationships. But the synastry is one thing. Like people always ask like, oh, synastry, like how do me and my friend get along, or like me and my partner get along? That's just going to tell you whether or not you guys have compatibility in how you approach things in life, right? So like from an astrologer's perspective, me looking at your synastry is me kind of going, okay, I'm going to follow you guys on a hangout and I'm going to see how you guys are communicating and whether or not there's good connection and if you guys are on the same page. The composite chart's really like, that's really what most people need to look at. It's like, well, but what's actually going to happen? And all I'll say is this, in terms of your guys' friendship, Saturn's moving through your 7th house. So it's teaching both of you guys that you have to learn to approach relationships differently. Sometimes there's too much togetherness. Sometimes it can mean that both of you guys need to be like more kind of aware of your role in the relationship. Together, you guys have a Aries sun and a Venus in Aries in the 7th. So that's really good for, you know, compatibility. That's really good for, you know, kind of being like a solid unit. I think the challenge is that Mars and Chiron have been going through there. So you're kind of dealing with any kind of like relational wounds that you have. And Jupiter's been on your Mars too. And a lot of it's just like, well, how do we face the world together? How do we support each other through career changes? And things don't really start to get real until next year, really the end of 2027. When Saturn starts approaching the conjunction to the sun, which might be more about, you know, goals that you guys are completing together. And then Saturn's coming into conjunction with like Venus. And then Venus's aspects, obviously, well, it opposes Pluto. Like both of you guys are working through some stuff. And I feel like the relationship is a little bit of like a crash course in trying to see if you guys can kind of grow and evolve and see if you can like learn to support one another and who you're becoming rather than what you're kind of coming away from. And both of your guys' charts are just like riddled with a lot of stuff that's kind of like either hidden or things that are kind of like beneath the surface or things that other people don't know about. And I think that that can actually get in the way and can create a lot of issues in your relationship. So be careful, just my 2 cents. And listen to Libra rising, because I know one of you is Virgo, one of you is Libra, but you can listen to Libra rising and you're going to see there's a lot of accuracy in the predictions of like what's going on in your friendship dynamic. Hopefully that's helpful. Next time, tell me ahead of time, and I can save you a lot of time by just doing the composite stuff. We kind of did it backwards there, so trying to respect your privacy as much as I could. All right, Durian, the real MVP. Thank you for your patience. Let me go and pull you up here. Let's see. And did you have a specific person, my dude? If you do, let me know. It looks like I've got you here. Durian. Am I saying your name right? Okay. All right, I've got you here. November 21st, 1996, 6:30 a.m. in India. And I have a specific person, honestly, 2.5 months, felt like the 1940s kind of connection, met in architectural class. I don't have any way to contact her. I have no number, nothing. Now the regret is hard. Okay, send me send me her birthday, because it sounds like you probably don't know her time. If you do, great, send it. But we're going to talk a little bit about what's going on with your relational dynamics, because there's stuff happening in your chart that's very specific to relational changes. And then I'll look at her stuff with yours and tell you what I think. Okay? So here's the deal. As a Scorpio, right, sun, you have been going through Uranus in opposition to your sun basically for like the last 2 years. So that in general can mean there's a lot of back and forth, hot and cold, off and on with relationships. And that things feel like it's at a bit of a distance. You're a Sag rising and you've got Pluto in Sag, Mercury in Sag. I think what's working in your favor is that Mercury is in your first house. So that means that literally you will bring people in and you are supposed to meet partners, Gemini, either in pairs, so you can meet somebody while they're with another person, or they're with their sibling, or like whatever, maybe they're with like another friend. And your partner is going to be a combination in the future, right, of like Aries, Sag, or I would say maybe Gemini, one of those things. So Mercury would be Gemini, Virgo, or Sag, or Aries. I know I'm throwing a lot at you, but one of those 4 signs is likely going to be the combination of the person you're going to be with. Taller, you'll meet them through higher education, school, or you'll meet them through travel or at an airport, Sagittarius. And whenever you have your 7th house ruler in the first house, you just have to turn your light for business on and be like, yes, I want to meet somebody. And Jupiter is like, they're going to be attracted to you while you're traveling or while you're studying. They're going to think you're super wise, really intellectual, really smart. Watch for her because she may be on the taller side and she can also have like a big smile and like longer hair, or she can just be like really kind of tall and like leaner, really Sag-like, or she has her hair up in a ponytail, or she may have like a lot of like red on, like red lipstick, red highlights in her hair, warmer kind of flush tones to her face. That's what you want to watch. And she can be culturally different. She could speak a different language than you, come from a different background than you, something like that. She says, I don't have the time. She's practically a ghost. Okay, that's fine. But do you have her actual birthday? No Facebook. All right. So part of what's going on right now is like a bit of like a triple threat. One is you have Uranus that's going into Gemini. And this creates dramatic changes with relationships. So last year you saw Uranus going in and out of your 7th house, where it was like, well, maybe you met people through education. Maybe you met people online. But with Uranus in opposition to your sun, it wasn't working out. Now Uranus is coming into opposition with your Pluto, where you're like, why are they hiding from me? Pluto represents hiding. And Pluto brings up obsession, fixation, being like, oh my God, I met this person. Like, I just got to have them. And they're like, you know, out of reach, Uranus in opposition. Then you're going to see a lot of conjunctions and squares with Uranus. So my thought is, you know, keep an open mind. There's a possibility you might actually meet other people. Gemini's duality, so it could mean another person pops into your life. And I'm of the frame of mind that I think we're going to see a lot of really crazy relationship changes for Sag risings over the next like month. Because all these planets come into the 7th house where you meet others, but it's going to square the north and the south node. So this is also like a really good week to talk to an astrologer, talk to a therapist, talk to a coach, that kind of stuff, because people are going to give you feedback about how to navigate what's going on in your relationships and changes with your career or with your home. So what you want to watch for is when Mercury starts squaring the north and the south node. So that'll be around like the 19th. Watch for communications or connections or running into people or meeting someone new. Watch when the sun squares the north and the south node, because that could actually bring a run-in or a reconnection with somebody in an educational sense around May 25th. And then when the Uranus transit squares the north or the south node around the beginning of June. And then the finale will be Mars conjunct Uranus, where I think you're probably still seeing some rockiness in dating at the beginning of July. And then it's going to start to subside. Now, the other side of this is also the fact that Uranus is opposing Pluto. So some people might feel like from their perspective, you know, you're a little ornery or obstinate, you're unwilling to change, you can be a little fixated or controlling or like obsessive. And I'm not saying you are, but that's the perspective where people are like, no, I don't want to be pinned down. Like, don't tell me what to do. You know, they're going to be kind of like restless. And Pluto at 2 is like your values and like possessiveness. You're going to see a lot of people who are like, I'm not trying to settle down. I don't want anything like serious. And they get kind of squirrely. And you also have Saturn that's been, you know, you're in your Saturn returns. You're learning some big lessons about love. You have Saturn conjunct Juno, where there's some karma connected to where you had delayed relational issues in a past life. And then Saturn's going to hit your moon, or has hit your moon, and it's going to retrograde back, which is about like meeting a younger girl and there being some kind of delay with connecting with her. So like all these things together between this transit, the sextile, and the opposition, it doesn't really feel like much was actually going to pan out, in my opinion. Now, will you see some kind of change in your love life? Yeah, but we got to get Uranus out of opposition with either Pluto or your Mercury. This Uranus transit is trining Pluto, so it's trying to get you to meet people locally, meet people online, to be talking to them a lot first before meeting them. If you're meeting people online and they seem one way and then you meet them in person, they seem another, they can get kind of like weird and squirrely. And I believe that you're probably going to see a partner return or reconnect with you either in the fall, so you could see this in October, or I could see this change when Uranus retrogrades back into your 6th, comes into your 7th, and then you're going to see more opportunity for like relationships to, I think, stabilize as you're getting into the spring of next year. Fun fact, right? You're going to be turning 30 this year. So once you turn 30, you're going to move into your annual perfection year 7. So that means from November of 26 to November of 27, we're focusing on your Mercury or your 7th house. So when planets go through there, that's when it's going to be the most active. And what you're going to find is that the Mercury retrogrades are really going to impact you. Well, look at where Mercury is in your chart. It's in your 1st house, right? At a 9, conjunct Pluto, which means you could meet them when you're studying in a library. You could meet them, you know, where you're feeling like you're connecting with them psychically or like through meditation before you meet them. They could be culturally different or a foreigner. You meet them in a foreign land. And the Mercury retrogrades are going to impact you big time. So let's scan ahead really quick. Let's look at what's going on with Mercury. And I want to see some aspect between Mercury and Jupiter. Okay, well, here's Mercury on your sun. So you could meet somebody around early December. You're going to have your Mercury return around the 12th. Somebody could be coming in then. And then you're actually going to have Mercury coming into conjunction with Jupiter here around early January, which is a good way to meet people. And then probably when Mercury pops into your 5th, so after the retrograde, that would be better for dating because it's going to make aspects to Jupiter and like your natal placement. So I think dating is going to be much stronger April of next year. Pretty much the beginning of April, and then as you're getting into May. But somebody's going to walk up to you and they're going to approach you. It's not somebody you have to chase. You don't have to talk to them. You don't have to pursue them. Nothing like that. They're going to run up to you. And they're probably going to want to talk to you about classes or a lecture. They're going to talk to you about travel, something cultural related. All that's ruled by Jupiter. So, I mean, it's interesting. Like, you would make a really good architect. I don't know if that's what you're continuing to go to school for. But Jupiter in your 2nd house tells me that, yeah, I mean, you're on the right path education-wise. It is also somehow about your education and completing your education and having that like diploma or that kind of background is going to strengthen, you know, not just your romantic relationships, but like you're going to bring in a lot of clients, dude. So part of what's going on with Uranus in opposition to Mercury is it's like, hey, you know, relationships aren't going to be really stable right now because it's trying to get you to focus on what's going on with school. But go back, think about what happened when you were 18. That was the last time you had your 7th house annual perfection year. And likely that was a year that you met somebody and you were like, whoa, this is like wild. You're going to see something else that's probably going to happen this year. So the highlights are going to be that period into the spring. Watch what's going to be happening in May and June next year. You know, there's some buffer here because you got about a year of Uranus in opposition to your Mercury, but you can navigate relationships without a lot of like conflict if you're just learning to communicate with people differently. And I think so much of like Uranus trine Pluto is, you know, hey, you know, you might live here, I might live there. We might do a little bit of back and forth. We don't always have to see each other all the time. It's also about kind of like learning to kind of read the room. And like when people are telling you that they're interested, you know, you're not going to be like obsessively all in. And because Mercury conjunct Pluto, you are fixated with the idea of, oh my God, this amazing like romance and it's going to be great and I don't have to be alone and all of that stuff. I have Mercury Pluto too, so I know what that's like. But I think that this is about you not feeling like you have to hold on to people, giving them their space, allowing them to kind of be without making them feel like they're kind of having to commit or caged in. And the more space you give people, or the more that you act kind of detached, that you're not trying to kind of like settle down with them, the more that they're actually going to kind of come around. And you're going to see big changes the next 2 years between Uranus in opposition to your Pluto. You know, you're going to have some retrogrades that are going to be going through there in the summer of 2028. But this is the year where you're supposed to be bringing somebody in that really kind of like checks all the boxes. So you're graduating next May. Cool. Yeah. So, I mean, literally something about your education and completing your education and your relationships go hand in hand. So you may feel like while you're going to school, relationships aren't kind of feeling the most fulfilled. But I do think that's going to change pretty significantly right around the spring of next year. And I don't know, watch for somebody who may kind of like pop in unexpectedly, especially like right around your birthday with those retrogrades over your sun. Okay. Come back to this. Trust me, you're going to see that there's going to be some people who are going to kind of pop into your life over the next week or so that's coming in to give you advice or to talk to you about how to navigate your relationships. And I would be really open to just meeting different unconventional people, trying to start connecting with people more so by having like a platonic friendship and then letting it kind of develop into something that could be like a romantic connection, right? Hopefully that was helpful for you. Hopefully that was helpful for all of you guys. That was quite an eventful evening. Thank you guys for your patience. I appreciate it. I know it takes a little bit of time to get through these. Don't forget to give me a thumbs up if you like this channel. Come back and hang out with me on Sunday. We're going to talk about all this kind of like fateful Uranus stuff going on over this next week. I've got a good video put together for you guys. Don't forget to subscribe also so you can see more of this content. And if you guys want to see more about me and my work, if you want to book a reading with me, you want to have like a natal chart or a solar return, a relationship reading, I do all of that stuff. My sessions are a combination of tarot and astrology and what I see intuitively. You can see more about me and my work by clicking the links in the description below, heading over to beyondtheveiltarot.com. Now, I do teach astrology, so if you want to learn my kind of astrological philosophy, I've got beginners and intermediate classes. I teach tarot as well, and I've got some really awesome digital transit calendars that uses my software to plug into your calendar to tell you what transits are happening on what days. So I do have those for sale on my website. They're super amazing. I use them myself. So if you guys want to stay on the up and up with what's going on through transits, check all of that out and more at beyondtheveiltarot.com. All right, guys. Well, thank you so much. I'll see you soon. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and we will hang out on Sunday's Astro Weather. Take care.